ridiculously dummy f***ing baddie calls out to everyone to come down for breakfast. Inside his bedroom, a young, worthless special man lies fast asleep under his blanket, but the calls from the kitchen continue, urging him to hurry up before all the food is gone. In the kitchen, the woman with reddish-brown hair is busy preparing the meal, chopping ingredients on a cutting board. Hearing her voice, the young man lets out a loud yawn and stretches on his bed. This 20-year-old man-child, Daeho, who groggily wakes up and finally decides to get moving. He springs out of bed, muttering that he is on his way, and quickly begins to pull on his clothes. Just as Daeho gets dressed and calls out that he is coming, a sudden blaring siren triggers a distant memory from his childhood. He remembers the chaotic night of a terrible car accident, where rescue workers in orange uniforms worked frantically under the pouring rain to save those trapped inside a crushed blue vehicle. A young Daeho cried uncontrollably during the tragedy, which was soon followed by a somber funeral service. Not long after, a kind man placed a comforting hand on his shoulder and introduced him to his new family, telling young Daeho to say hello to them. Standing alongside the man were a warm-hearted woman and her daughters, who welcomed Daeho into their home, beginning a new life where he has lived with them ever since. Back in the present, Daeho shakes off the brief memory and walks out of his room, pausing when he notices someone nearby. He finds a young woman with long blonde hair brushing her teeth in the hallway while wearing comfortable athletic clothes. Daeho warmly wishes her a good morning, calling her Mia. She casually returns the greeting around her toothbrush, and she is introduced as 23-year-old Mia Cha, starting off another ordinary day in their household. Daeho eagerly rushes down the stairs, calling back to Mia to hurry up as she trails behind him, fixing her hair with a light sigh. Entering the kitchen, Daeho cheerfully greets Mr. and Mrs. Cha. The family patriarch, Young-gu Cha, looks up from his morning newspaper and warmly invites Daeho to take a seat at the dining table. Once everyone is seated, Daeho is eager to begin the meal, sharing a bright smile with Une Cha, who beams back at him. As Une carries a fresh container of food to the table, Mia offers to help her mother, but Une assures her that she has everything under control. Une then pauses to wonder where her other daughter, Sua, is, and asks Daeho if he wouldn't mind going upstairs to get her. Daeho eagerly agrees to help and promises to return in a flash. Watching him rush off, Mia comments on how Daeho always seems to have boundless energy, to which Une laughs and agrees, attributing it to his youth. Daeho heads upstairs and knocks gently on Sua's bedroom door before cautiously peeking inside. He hesitantly steps in and spots 21-year-old Sua Cha resting on her bed. Clearing his throat nervously, Daeho lets her know that breakfast is ready, but she quickly dismisses him, stating that she isn't hungry. When Daeho tries to encourage her anyway, Sua turns over on her bed, turning her back to him, and firmly repeats that she has no appetite. She then scolds him for barging into her room without permission. Startled and highly embarrassed, Daeho profusely apologizes and quickly shuts the door, leaving him to awkwardly scratch his head in the hallway while Sua gets back to resting. Returning to the kitchen, Daeho informs Une that Sua refuses to come down because she isn't hungry. Une becomes visibly concerned, sighing at the fact that her daughter is skipping meals again and expressing her wish for Sua to eat more consistently. Young-gu reassures his wife, telling her not to worry because Sua is old enough to manage herself, and declares that it is time to eat. With that, Daeho and Mia happily wish everyone a good meal and dig in. As they eat together, Daeho devours his food with immense speed, prompting a gentle reminder from Une to slow down because the food isn't going anywhere. After finishing his delicious breakfast, Daeho spends the afternoon hanging out with his close friend, Gobong Han. As they sit outside near some large pipes, Gobong leans in with a playful grin and asks Daeho a rather personal question, wondering if he has ever seen a girl's clothing item. Taken aback, Daeho is shocked by the sudden topic, but Gobong points out that since Daeho lives with several women, he must have come across some by now. Daeho quickly defends himself, stating that he has never done such a thing and that it isn't a cool thing to do. Chuckling at his reaction, Gobong offers to show him something special and pulls out a pair of striped, light blue clothing item. Daeho is stunned to learn that the clothing item actually belongs to Gobong's sister, Yu-hee. Blushing deeply, Daeho asks if they really belong to her, which Gobong enthusiastically confirms before grabbing Daeho's hand and pressing the item into his palm. Although Daeho initially declines, Gobong insists that he should keep them as a gift because Daeho has always been a great friend to him. Daeho is left holding the clothing item, feeling highly conflicted as the sun begins to set and the two friends bid each other farewell, riding home on their bicycles. Later that night, the house is quiet and dark as everyone goes to sleep. Inside his bedroom, Daeho lies awake in bed, letting out a restless sigh. Unable to sleep, he sits up and decides to retrieve the gift Gobong gave him from under his desk. Staring at the striped clothing item in his hands, he feels his heart begin to beat incredibly fast as a wave of excitement and nervousness washes over him. The intense rush of emotions leaves him feeling flustered and thirsty, prompting him to head downstairs to get a glass of water to calm himself down. Stepping out into the dark hallway, Dae-ho quietly makes his way down the stairs to the kitchen. He pours himself a fresh glass of water and drinks it down eagerly to quench his thirst. Just as he finishes his drink, a sudden, soft groaning sound echoes through the quiet house, making him pause in surprise. He listens closely in the darkness, wondering what the noise is, before realizing that the playful sounds are coming directly from Mrs. Cha's bedroom. Hearing the muffled sounds from the hallway, Dae-ho wonders if Mrs. Cha might be feeling unwell. He quietly makes his way toward the source of the noise, stepping carefully through the dark corridor. As he gets closer, he notices that the door to her bedroom is slightly ajar, with a warm beam of light spilling out into the dark hallway alongside soft, rhythmic sighs. Driven by curiosity and concern, Dae-ho bends down to peek through the narrow opening of the door. To his utter astonishment, he witnesses Yoongu and Une in the middle of a highly vigorous, late-night private study session. Une appears completely out of breath, her face flushed and sweat dripping from her brow as the couple pushes through the intense private study session. Dae-ho is completely frozen in place, a sudden realization washing over him as he recognizes the true nature of their late-night exercise. His heart starts pounding wildly in his chest, the heavy thuds echoing in his own ears as he stares wide-eyed through the crack in the door. Standing paralyzed in the dimly lit hallway, he is left entirely unsure of what his next move should be. After witnessing the wholesome late-night exercise downstairs, Dae-ho quietly slips back up the steps and lies down on his bed, his heart still hammering wildly in his chest. As he tosses and turns, he scratches his head in frustration, trying to push the vivid images from his mind, before finally deciding that his best option is to just try and get some sleep. When the morning sun finally breaks through the window, Dae-ho wakes up with a sudden start, only to discover that his active imagination during sleep had triggered an unexpected reaction. Blushing intensely, he realizes he has left behind a splash of his morning drink on his clothes from a definitely wholesome dream. Terrified of anyone discovering his secret, he quickly slips out of his room to smuggle the messy clothing item down to the laundry basket, praying that nobody ever finds out about his embarrassing morning mishap. Down in the kitchen, a cheerful Une Cha hums a light tune while admiring the fresh tomatoes she bought from the market earlier. Her peaceful morning is suddenly interrupted when Mia playfully sneaks up from behind and slaps her backside, enthusiastically wishing her a good morning. Startled and blushing, Une gasps in shock while her daughter casually strolls over to the refrigerator to ask what is for breakfast. While eating at the table, Une gently rubs her sore lower back and chides Mia for playing so roughly. But Mia simply laughs it off, teasingly complimenting her mother on how amazingly youthful and fit she still looks. Just then, a nervous Dae-ho enters the kitchen and quietly greets them. Une warmly welcomes him and invites him to sit down, prompting Dae-ho to hesitantly ask about Mr. Cha's whereabouts. Une explains that her husband left early for a business trip and will be gone for a few days, a piece of news that brings a wave of silent relief to Dae-ho. As he eats his breakfast, he keeps his head down, unable to look Mrs. Cha in the eye due to the lingering memories of last night, yet thankful that he won't have to face Mr. Cha for a while. Later on, Une heads to the laundry room with a basket full of clothes to start the wash. As she sorts through the items, she pauses, picking up a particular white clothing item and inspecting it closely with a puzzled and deeply flushed expression. After examining the mysterious piece of laundry, she quietly loads the remaining clothes into the washing machine, crouching down as she remains lost in her own deep thoughts. In the laundry room, Une starts the washing machine and watches it spin, her mind deeply occupied with what she found in Dae-ho's laundry. She sighs to herself, realizing that someone needs to teach the young man about these things, though her husband seems completely disinterested. Later that afternoon, Dae-ho meets up with Go-bong outside a local store. Go-bong brings up their previous conversation, asking if Dae-ho still has the clothing item he gave him, to which Dae-ho nervously confirms that he does. When Go-bong offers to get him another pair, Dae-ho quickly insists that it isn't necessary. Dae-ho then hesitatingly changes the subject, asking Go-bong if he actually knows what training really is. Go-bong reacts with loud shock, repeating the words so loudly that Dae-ho has to quickly shush him in embarrassment as bystanders turn to look. Blushing, Go-bong mutters that it sounds like something only bad kids do and that they shouldn't get involved in such things, though Dae-ho explains that he was simply curious about the subject. As they part ways, Go-bong asks what Dae-ho did with the clothing item he gave him, though Dae-ho silently insists to himself that he didn't do anything with it at all. Back in his room that night, Dae-ho lies flat on his back, unable to sleep as his mind keeps drifting back to the vivid memory of Mrs. Cha during her late-night private study session. His thoughts are suddenly cut short by the sound of his bedroom door opening. Une steps in, holding a plate of sliced apples, and notes that she noticed his lights were still on. Finding him awake, she kindly suggests that they sit down and have a chat together. They sit beside each other on the edge of the bed in an awkward silence. Une turns to Dae-ho and leans in, making him flinch in surprise, before softly asking if he has ever engaged in a private study session before. Daeho is left completely bewildered, having no idea what she means. Spotting his confusion, Une lets out a sigh, realizing that he is completely in the dark on the subject. Fidgeting nervously, she tells him that, since he is now officially a big boy, he really ought to know about these things, leaving Daeho to ask what a study session even is. Une looks incredibly flustered and hesitates for a moment, but she ultimately decides to take charge and guide the young man through this unfamiliar territory. Later, he's startled by how quickly everything ended. Daeho is incredibly apologetic and flustered, admitting that he has no idea what just happened. Une kindly reassures him, wiping the splash of the high morning drink and gently explaining that it is not his fault at all. To his utter amazement, she even praises him, saying that he did exceptionally well and that she is proud of him, leaving the young man completely stunned and deeply touched by her warm words. Standing in his room as the tension settles, Daeho tries to process the experience and asks if this hands-on lesson is what people call a personal study routine. Une lets out a light giggle at his innocent curiosity and confirms that this is indeed what it was. Daeho then wonders if big people engage in this kind of study session every single day. Une clarifies that while it is not a daily requirement, it is something that needs to be done regularly. Hearing this, Daeho realizes that since he is now officially a big boy, he should probably practice it often, which Une encourages, explaining that it is important for maintaining good health. Daeho innocently asks if they will be doing this study session together every time, but Une gently corrects him, stating that he will have to learn how to manage his routine all by himself from now on. Seeing his utter shock at the idea of solo practice, she gently pats his shoulder and explains that she was only helping him out today because he is still completely new to it. Before making her departure, Une gives him one final, serious instruction, telling him that he must keep their session a secret from everyone else in the house. Daeho quickly agrees, promising her that he will not say a single word. Relieved, she smiles, tells him she trusts him, and thanks him before stepping out of the room. Left alone on his bed to quietly reflect on the evening's events, as the door clicks shut, Daeho sits in silence. Walking down the dark hallway and down the stairs, Une feels a sense of sympathy for him, reflecting on how his lonely upbringing meant he never had anyone to teach him about these essential things. Back in her own kitchen, she grabs a quick drink of water before heading into her bedroom. Feeling completely exhausted and heavily flushed from the study session, she changes out of her clothes and climbs into bed. However, as she lies there, memories of their study session trigger a sudden wave of tension, leaving her to toss and turn with a soft, restless sigh. Eventually, the night fades away, and a bright new morning arrives with the cheerful sound of birds chirping outside. Downstairs in the kitchen, a new day begins as Mia looks around and curiously asks about her father's whereabouts. Back at the breakfast table, Mom lets everyone know that her father will be returning tomorrow. Hearing this, Daeho quietly wishes Mrs. Cha a good morning, which she warmly returns. However, she quickly turns away, feeling incredibly awkward as she notices that the young man still seems deeply concerned about the events of the previous night. As Mia playfully accuses Daeho of eating her snacks and the two of them begin to bicker, Une continues eating her breakfast in silence, trying her best to manage the growing awkwardness in the room. With her husband still away, she realizes it will just be the three of them in the house for the rest of the day. Later that night, Daeho lies flat on his back in bed, completely unable to sleep as his mind continues to wander in the dark. Suddenly, his thoughts drift back to the vivid memory of his adoptive parents' intense private study session, which triggers an immediate playful reaction. He sits up on his bed with a sudden start, realizing his eagerness for battle grows stronger. Remembering Mrs. Cha's health advice, he knows he needs to perform a personal study routine, but attempting to do so all on his own proves to be far more difficult than he expected. Unable to manage on his own, Daeho quietly makes his way down the hall and opens Mrs. Cha's bedroom door with a soft click. Startled by the sudden noise in the dark, she sits up in her bed and nervously demands to know who is there. Stepping into the room, a heavily blushing and breathing Daeho notes that she is still awake. Seeing him standing there in such a restless state, Mrs. Cha asks him what is wrong. Struggling to find his words, he looks down and admits that he tried to follow her instructions but has no idea what to do, helplessly explaining that he simply cannot manage the private study session by himself. On a bright and sunny afternoon, Une spends her day hanging laundry out to dry on the rooftop, though she occasionally pauses to lose herself in deep, contemplative thoughts. Inside the house, Mia is in a cheerful mood, trying on different outfits and admiring her style in the mirror. Meanwhile, Suah remains in her dim bedroom, letting out a tired yawn as she stretches at her desk. Later in the afternoon, Daeho spends time with his close friend Gobong, happily feeding a stray kitten outside before the two finally bid each other farewell as night begins to fall. Back home, Une is busy vacuuming the living room when Mia calls out that dinner is ready, prompting her mother to shut off the machine. Sitting down at the dining table, Une sighs and gently rubs her aching lower back, noticing Sua's empty seat and asking if her daughter is skipping another meal. Mia quickly suggests simply leaving her alone since she rarely listens anyway. As they eat, Mia curiously asks why her father has not returned yet, prompting Une to quietly recall his schedule. Mia then points out that he is expected to return tomorrow, a piece of news that instantly sends a wave of panic through Daeho, causing his heart to thump wildly with sudden anxiety. Watching his nervous reaction, Une feels a quiet wave of concern wash over her, realizing just how anxious the young man has become about her husband's return. Later that night, Une lies awake in her bedroom, unable to sleep as her own heart beats restlessly in the quiet dark. Her thoughts are suddenly interrupted by the sound of her bedroom door creaking open, causing her to gasp in utter surprise. Standing in the doorway, a heavily blushing and sweating Daeho softly apologizes for disturbing her. He helplessly explains that he is completely at a loss because his eagerness for battle grows stronger once again. Seeing him standing there in such a desperate state, Une lies on her bed with a wildly beating heart, completely overwhelmed as she quietly calls out his name. Later, the peaceful afternoon is broken as Younggu pulls up in his car, loudly announcing his return to the family. Une warmly welcomes her husband back and asks how his trip was, while a tired Younggu enters the house holding a box of chocolates and looking for Mia. Suddenly, Mia snatches the treats right out of his hands, happily cheering as she runs off to enjoy them. Une can only let out an exasperated sigh at her daughter's childish behavior, though her mind is quickly pulled back to a much more pressing concern as she glances toward the living room. There, she spots a deeply troubled Daeho holding a glass of water and keeping his head down. Though Younggu is quite confused by the young man's behavior and asks if they have eaten yet, Daeho remains completely silent, eventually walking away while Un-A watches him with a worried expression. As night begins to fall, Daeho is consumed by a deep sense of regret, questioning whether he should have ever initiated such a stretching session with Mrs. Cha in the first place. Meanwhile, Mia enjoys a refreshing warm shower to wash away the day, happily humming to herself under the running water. Stepping out of the bathroom with a towel wrapped tightly around her body, she walks down the quiet hallway, only to freeze in surprise when she notices someone waiting nearby. She finds a very hesitant Daeho standing in the corridor. Amused by his nervous posture, she playfully asks what the young man wants. Blushing intensely, Daeho admits that he actually needs her help with something. Surprised but curious, Mia invites him to discuss it in her bedroom, where Daeho quietly sits down on a stool, feeling incredibly nervous. Sitting on her bed and casually scrolling through her phone, Mia asks him to get straight to the point and explain exactly what he needs her assistance for. Daeho gulps nervously, struggling to find his words as his face turns completely red under her gaze. Taking a deep breath, he finally gathers his courage and hesitantly asks if she would be willing to help him with his personal study moment. Taken completely by surprise, Mia stops typing on her phone and stares down at him in stunned silence, while a deeply embarrassed Daeho keeps his head bowed, anxiously waiting for her reaction. Caught completely off guard by the sight, she is left speechless and gasps in absolute shock, struggling to process what she is seeing. As evening begins to settle over the quiet neighborhood, Une stands in the kitchen washing dishes, letting out a soft, contemplative sigh as she gets lost in her own thoughts. A light chime from a nearby appliance soon catches her attention, pulling her back to the present. She prepares a warm beverage and carries the tray into the living room to present it to her husband, Younggu, who is busy practicing his golf swing. She warmly suggests that he take a break to enjoy some tea, and Younggu pauses his practice to accept her offering. As they enjoy their peaceful evening together, Une thinks about purchasing some of the same treats for the children, and her husband agrees that it is a wonderful idea. Inside the house, a very different conversation is unfolding in Mia's bedroom. Sitting on her bed wrapped in a bath towel, Mia looks at Daeho with amusement and asks what exactly he is talking about. She quickly realizes he is asking for her assistance with his private study routine, openly questioning if he really wants her to help him with such a playful task. A deeply blushing and sweating Daeho nervously admits that he tried to manage the routine on his own but simply could not do it, which is why he was hoping she could help him out. Fidgeting with his fingers in absolute embarrassment, Daeho waits for her response, leaving Mia completely taken aback. She lets out a light chuckle and wonders if he even understands what a private study moment actually is. A flustered Daeho quickly explains his limited understanding, stammering that it is simply an activity big people engage in to maintain their health and well-being. This explanation prompts Mia to ask if his friend Gobong was the one who filled his head with these ideas, and Daeho sheepishly confirms that Gobong was indeed his source of information. Mia lets out a tired sigh, remarking that she knew it had to be Gobong because his friend has always given her an unsettling vibe. As Daeho quietly reflects on his past lessons, Mia looks down at him thoughtfully and asks what he expects her to do to help. Daeho hesitantly suggests that if she simply lies down in the chair, he will be able to manage the rest of his study routine entirely on his own. Finding the request harmless enough, Mia agrees and tells him to make it quick because she is tired and needs to get some rest as well. Deeply relieved, Daeho thanks her as his eagerness for a study session goes stronger. Mia shrugs off his gratitude and flops face down onto her chair, pulling out her phone. She instructs him to get started and keep it brief, while she distracts herself with her device. Daeho nervously agrees, stepping closer. It is then that a sudden, alarming realization hits her, as she remembers that she is not even wearing any clothing item. Before she can speak, Daeho's hand firmly makes contact, initiating an incredibly sudden and wholesome study session. Shocked by the intense activity, Mia abruptly bolts upright and turns around, clutching her phone with a deeply flushed face as she frantically tells him to wait, demanding to know what exactly he thinks he is doing. Safe inside his bedroom, Daeho lies awake on his bed, clutching his pillow tightly as his heart hammers wildly in his chest. He is consumed by immense confusion, wondering what exactly is going on and why Mia would define his simple request for a private study routine as a full stretching exercise session. As he tosses and turns, a wave of panic washes over him, and he begins to worry if this sudden development means he is now obligated to marry Mia. Staring blankly into the quiet room, he struggles to make sense of everything, though he cannot help but admit to himself that the experience actually felt incredibly good. Across the hallway, a completely relaxed Mia lies sound asleep in her own bed, entirely undisturbed by the thoughts keeping the young man awake. The next morning, the bright blue sky signals the start of a new day. Downstairs, Une calls out to the household, letting everyone know that breakfast is ready. Hearing her voice, a tired Daeho steps out of his room while letting out a loud yawn, but he quickly freezes in surprise. He spots Mia standing in the hallway, looking elegant in a dark floral dress. Feeling incredibly awkward, Daeho nervously tells her that he will see her downstairs, letting out an anxious laugh to try and ease the tension. Mia simply stares at him in silence for a moment, before suddenly delivering a playful smack to the back of his head. Rubbing his sore head, Daeho complains that the blow actually hurts, which only makes Mia giggle as she calls him an idiot. She then instructs him to hurry downstairs before all the breakfast is gone, leaving a blushing Daeho to watch her walk away. Later that night, under a dark and starry sky, Daeho quietly makes his way down the hallway. He gently pushes open Mia's bedroom door, gulping nervously as he peeks inside. He finds Mia on a yoga mat, deeply focused on her evening stretching exercises. Noticing his presence, she turns to him and asks what he wants. Standing hesitantly at the door, Daeho nervously asks if he can come in, which prompts a soft giggle from Mia. As she transitions into an impressive leg stretch, she casually asks him what exactly he is looking for from her this time. Daeho quickly waves his hands, reassuring her that his visit is nothing of the sort, and explains that he simply wants to ask her a question. Hearing this, Mia lowers her leg and leans against her bed, warmly inviting him to come inside and take a seat. Feeling highly flustered, Daeho blushingly thanks her as he steps into the room. Sitting comfortably on her bed, Mia encourages him to speak up, casually asking what his question is this time and prompting him to just tell her. Looking at her, Daeho is immediately struck with intense nervousness, his mind racing as he tries to gather his thoughts. Blushing deeply and sweating under her direct gaze, Daeho gulps down his anxiety and begins to speak hesitantly, struggling to find his voice as he stammers through his words. Finally, he gathers his courage and directly asks if they could engage in another study session together. Hearing his bold request, Mia is left completely stunned, her eyes widening in utter disbelief as a heavy blush rushes to her face, while her heart begins to pound wildly. An incredibly heavy, awkward silence fills the room as both of their hearts thump restlessly in the quiet air. Late at night, under a quiet sky, Sua is still awake in her bedroom, tapping away busily on her keyboard. Feeling completely drained from her work, she stretches her arms and lets out a tired yawn before finally shutting down her computer. With a soft sigh, she decides to head out, opening her bedroom door with a quiet click. As she steps into the hallway, she briefly pauses to look at Daeho's bedroom door in silence before continuing her way downstairs. Entering the dark kitchen, Sua quietly searches through the cupboards and refrigerator, eventually squatting on the floor to sort through some food packages. She lights the stove and begins frying an egg, the sizzle of the pan echoing through the quiet house. Hearing the noise, a concerned Yune enters the kitchen in her white clothing item, surprised to find someone awake. She asks her daughter if she is still up, and Sua calmly confirms her question while turning over her food, explaining that she is simply making a late-night sandwich. Une gently chides her, suggesting that she really ought to get some sleep during the night. Sua reminds her mother that her college semester has just ended, and asks if she can just be left alone to relax for a bit. Une watches in surprise as Sua prepares a large tray of snacks, wondering if she really intends to eat that much food. Relenting, Yune tells her to do as she pleases, mentioning that there is also cheese in the fridge if she wants any. Sua quickly thanks her mother and suggests that she can head back to bed now. Feeling slightly dismissed, Yune lets out a quiet sigh as she walks out of the kitchen. Making her way back up the stairs, Une reflects on the household, silently realizing that she probably doesn't need to worry about Daeho's personal development anymore. Meanwhile, inside Mia's bedroom, a very tense conversation is taking place. A frustrated Mia sighs and directly questions what is wrong with him, leaning in to ask if he is seriously asking her such a bizarre question. Sweating and blushing furiously, Daeho jumps up in a panic, waving his hands while frantically trying to explain that his words came out wrong. Mia looks at him with a serious gaze, demanding that he be completely honest and tell her exactly what is running through his mind. Rubbing his arm in extreme embarrassment, Daeho hesitantly reminds her that she previously referred to their previous study session as actual training. He admits that he is still highly confused and doesn't even remember the details clearly, but he nervously wonders if their session means she is now going to have a new squad partner. Confused by his bizarre assumption, Mia stares at Daeho and admits that she really does not understand his train of thought. A deeply blushing Daeho looks down and tries to explain himself, stammering that he figured if they were going to have a new squad partner, they could engage in the study session again, especially since he cannot recall the details of what happened the night before. Listening to his explanation, Mia leans forward on the bed and smiles, realizing his true intentions. She directly questions if he is simply trying to say that he wants to engage in another study session with her. Pressing herself, she catches Daeho completely off guard, leaving him frozen in shock. She lets out a soft laugh and asks if he even understands what study session actually means. With her pressing, a highly flustered Daeho nervously explains his belief that study session is solely for the purpose of having a new squad partner. He adds that even though he was taught it is a bad thing, they already did it, so he thought it would be okay. Mia is highly amused by his extreme innocence and wonders who on earth could have possibly told him such things. She playfully grabs his face, gently shaking his head as she asks if he truly believes that study session is a bad thing. Daeho nods eagerly in response, insisting that he thinks it is very bad. Letting out a soft sigh, Mia advises him that he should really stop hanging out with his friend Gobong, noting that his friend has clearly been a terrible influence on him. She then tells him to pay close attention because she is going to explain exactly what study session is actually about. Daeho gulps nervously and nods, hanging on to her every word as she begins her explanation. After she finishes speaking, Daeho is left completely stunned and asks if what she said is actually the truth, which Mia calmly confirms. She tells him that he has had it completely wrong this entire time, leaving him to quietly process the reality of the situation. Trembling with a sudden rush of emotion, Daeho realizes that study session is not a bad thing at all, and that it is actually something everyone else participates in. Overwhelmed by his own misunderstanding, he begins to cry, tearfully mumbling to himself that study session is simply something guys and girls do whenever they want. Watching him cry, Mia finds his reaction incredibly cute, though she playfully thinks to herself that it is a bit of a pity. Leaning in close with a playful grin, she teases him by saying that no girl is ever going to study session with someone like him, especially since he cannot even remember what he did the previous night. Daeho gulps nervously, completely flustered as he softly calls out her name. Smiling warmly, Mia suggests that since they have already done their study session once, she might as well let him train one more time. To Daeho's utter astonishment, she begins to turn on her study PC, inviting him to begin another wholesome study session together. Later, a sudden noise echoes through the hallway as Suah opens her bedroom door and steps out. Hearing the sound, a sweating and nervous Daeho quickly glances over his shoulder in a panic. He turns around completely, his face immediately flushing as he catches sight of Suah walking toward him. Holding a small juice box, Suah sips her drink and looks at him with a calm, questioning expression. Terrified of being caught, Daeho panics, awkwardly trying to compose himself as he struggles to find his words. In a desperate bid to cover up the situation, he frantically tells Suah that he was simply having a conversation with Mia. Letting out an incredibly awkward, nervous laugh, he quickly adds that Mia was merely teaching him a lesson about something. Suah simply watches his frantic explanation with quiet indifference. She steps directly in front of him and coldly instructs him to get out of her way, leaving Daeho completely startled by her blunt attitude. As she casually walks past him toward the stairs, Suah sips her drink and mutters that she really doesn't care what the two of them were doing. Daeho is left standing in the quiet hallway, entirely speechless but immensely relieved. Once she is safely out of sight, Daeho's legs give out from the sheer tension, and he slides down against the wall with a soft thud, letting out a massive sigh of relief. As the night deepens over the quiet household, the starry sky remains peaceful. However, back inside her bedroom, Mia lies awake on her bed, letting out a series of soft, restless sighs. Unable to calm her racing thoughts and still highly flustered from their interrupted study session, she tosses and turns in her comfortable clothes. Seeking a way to release the lingering tension of the evening, she gently wears her gloves, quietly initiating a private study moment in the solitude of her dark room. On a bright and beautifully sunny morning, the day begins with a quiet click as Mia opens her bedroom door, letting out a heavy, restless sigh. Walking out into the hallway, she stretches her arms over her head, her face reflecting a deep sense of exhaustion. She quietly complains to herself that she was completely unable to sleep last night, frustration washing over her as she wonders what exactly is wrong with her. Shaking off the sluggish feeling, she walks down the stairs while continuing to stretch, realizing that she cannot go on like this, and trying to figure out what she should do next. Still feeling entirely blocked and unable to clear her mind, Mia makes her way toward the kitchen, where her mother, Yune, is already busy preparing the morning meal. Noticing her daughter stretching nearby, Yune turns around with a curious look. As they sit down at the dining table, Yune points out that Mia is unusually late this morning. Mia apologizes, explaining that she simply did not sleep well last night, while Daeho quietly sits nearby, keeping his head down in awkward silence. Soo-ah is also seated at the table, prompting Mia to note with surprise that her sister is already awake. Soo-ah confirms she is up and mentions that she needs to head to the library later today, which Une warmly acknowledges. Just then, Young-gu joins the family, looking around the table with a bright smile as he happily comments on how wonderful it is to have the entire household gathered together for breakfast. He cheerfully declares that it is time to eat, and everyone begins digging into their food. While eating, Mia steals a quick glance at Daeho, only to find him happily devouring his breakfast with immense speed. Looking at his massive appetite in sheer disbelief, she lets out a silent sigh, finding it hard to believe how normal and carefree he is acting after everything that happened between them. Later that morning, Soo-ah prepares to head out, putting on her heels at the front door and calling out to her mother that she is leaving. Walking down the street under the blazing sun, Soo-ah wipes away a bead of sweat, quietly noting how incredibly hot it is today. Back at the house, Mia stands at the window, watching her sister walk away until she is completely out of sight. Turning back into the room, Mia silently notes that her father has already left for work and that Soo-ah is now out of the house as well. Sensing an opportunity, she walks into the living room with a determined look. She peeks into the kitchen where her mother is busy crouching on the floor cleaning vegetables and casually asks if she has any plans to head out today. Une looks up in surprise, asking what her daughter is talking about. Mia leans in and curiously asks her mother if she didn't used to attend yoga classes regularly. Une lets out a light laugh, explaining that she actually stopped going to those classes a very long time ago, leaving Mia to quietly ponder her next move. Determined to get the house all to themselves, Mia continues her persuasive effort, suggesting that her mother head to the market. She points out that since their father has been working so hard lately, she really ought to prepare something special for him. Une looks up in surprise, wondering if she really should. Mia enthusiastically insists, pointing out that they completely ran out of fresh fruit at breakfast and asking how her mother could have forgotten something so important. Une carefully considers her daughter's words, realizing that she actually has a very good point about buying some fresh fruit. Sensing her mother's hesitation, Mia quickly suggests making steak for dinner since their father has been looking quite thin lately. Agreeing with her daughter's advice, Une puts down her work to prepare for the trip, leaving Mia to celebrate her quiet victory. Soon, a soft click of the front door signals Une's departure as she heads down the path with her shopping bag, ready to visit the market. Back inside the house, Mia is absolutely thrilled to see her mother leave, happily hopping and skipping through the living room while celebrating how incredibly easy it was to empty the house. Now that she is completely alone, Mia quickly heads to her room, tossing her comfortable athletic clothes aside as she prepares to dress up. Standing in front of her mirror, she slips on a stunning, white clothing item with side laces, admiring her reflection with a confident smile. She decides that this elegant look will do nicely to get Daeho's attention. Stepping out into the hallway with a playful grin, she confidently tells herself that she will tease him with this new, elegant outfit and that he will surely be eager for another study session in no time. However, just as she makes her move, Daeho's bedroom door suddenly swings open. Wearing a red baseball cap and carrying a backpack, Daeho is completely startled to see her standing there, letting out a soft gasp in surprise. He blushes intensely upon seeing her proper outfit, nervously calling her name as he explains that he is actually on his way out to play with his friend Gobong. Mia crosses her arms in disbelief, questioning his decision to hang out with Gobong and asking if he is seriously leaving now. A flustered Daeho asks if there is something wrong with his plans. Letting out a disappointed sigh, Mia mutters that it is nothing. Inside, however, she is incredibly frustrated, having expected to spend some quality time with him now that they finally have the entire house to themselves. Apologizing for his sudden departure, Daeho tells her that he really has to go and runs down the stairs, promising to see her later. Watching him run off, Mia is left standing in the hallway in absolute frustration, realizing that this was not at all what she had planned, and silently cursing her terrible timing. Meanwhile, Daeho rides his bicycle down the sunny street, the wind rushing past him. However, as he pedals, his mind keeps drifting back to the image of Mia in that beautiful white dress, and his face quickly turns completely red. Overwhelmed by his racing thoughts, his heart begins to beat incredibly fast. Unable to contain his excitement, he abruptly screeches his brakes to a halt, stepping down onto the pavement under the shade of a large tree as his heart continues to thump wildly in his chest. Standing on the street with his bicycle, a sweating and breathless Daeho struggles to calm his racing thoughts, his heart pounding so hard that it feels as if it is going to burst in his chest. Back inside the quiet house, the only sound is the gentle whirring of the air conditioner, keeping the warm rooms cool. In her bedroom, Mia lies flat on her stomach on the bed, casually tapping on her phone in her white clothing item. Suddenly, the quiet is broken by the sound of approaching footsteps in the hallway. Before she can react, her bedroom door swings open with a loud click, and she looks up in utter surprise to see Daeho standing in the doorway, clutching his red cap and calling her name. Still completely startled, Mia turns over and directly questions what exactly he is doing back here when he was supposed to be hanging out with his friend. Still heavily panting and blushing from his frantic sprint back home, Daeho nervously admits that he changed his mind and came back specifically to engage in a private study session with her instead. Hearing his honest confession, a triumphant and pleased grin spreads across Mia's face as she softly hums in agreement. Looking at him playfully from the bed, she asks what exactly he wants to do now that he has returned. Later, Daeho and Mia are sitting together on the bedroom floor, deeply engaged in a competitive game of Jenga. As it becomes her turn, Mia hesitantly reaches out, her hand trembling slightly as she taps on a wooden block. Slowly pulling the piece from the middle of the tower, she watches as the structure begins to wobble before collapsing entirely with a loud thud, leaving her gasping in surprise. With the tower in ruins, a joyful Daeho throws his arms up in celebration, loudly cheering that he has officially won the game. Accepting her defeat, a blushing Mia reluctantly agrees to hold up her end of the bargain, stating that she will let him do whatever he wants, which an excited Daeho eagerly accepts. He nods in confirmation, reminding her that this was indeed their original agreement before they started playing. Mia quickly adds a condition, warning him that his request must be something they can do entirely inside her bedroom, which Daeho quietly agrees to. Feeling his heart begin to beat incredibly fast, Daeho softly calls out her name. Meanwhile, Mia smiles to herself, secretly planning to play hard to get before giving in to his request. Fidgeting with his hands, Daeho finally gathers his courage and hesitantly admits that he wants to teach her study session, leaving Mia completely startled. Shocked by his playful behavior, she blushes deeply and demands to know where exactly he learned about such things. Looking incredibly embarrassed, Daeho rubs his hands together and explains that he saw it on the internet, pointing out that since he is officially a gamer now, he felt it was time to look up these subjects. Letting out a soft sigh, Mia runs a hand through her hair and gently advises him that he shouldn't believe everything he reads online. She crosses her arms and firmly states that she cannot let him teach her, pointing out that they are family, which catches Daeho completely off guard. Looking down with a deeply flushed and disappointed face, Daeho quietly reflects on her words, realizing that because they are family, they are apparently not allowed to teach each other basic study session. She asks him if there is anything else he would like to do instead, reassuring him that she is still willing to let him do anything. Leaning back on her elbows, she asks if there isn't a different activity he has been wanting to try with her. Unable to contain any longer, he slowly stands up, his face turning completely red as he stammeringly admits that there is indeed something else he wants. Standing tall with a wildly beating heart, Daeho looks directly at her and declares that he wants to commence a private study session with her. Later, Daeho and Mia are in the middle of their wholesome lesson inside her bedroom when they are suddenly startled by approaching footsteps outside. In a panic, Mia loudly screams out to her mother, pleading with her not to open the bedroom door. Outside the door, a highly surprised Yune halts in her tracks, completely taken aback by her daughter's frantic warning. Standing outside the closed door, Yune curiously asks what is going on and inquires if there is someone else inside the room with her. Frozen under the blankets, Mia frantically covers her face with her arm and shouts back through the door, desperately claiming that she is simply having a personal study routine and warning her mother not to enter. Deeply embarrassed by the highly personal announcement, Yune quickly turns away, offering a flushed apology. As she quietly walks back down the stairs, Une softly suggests that Mia head down to the kitchen once she is finished with her routine. Back inside the room, a completely mortified Mia buries her face in her hands, desperately questioning what on earth she just said to her mother. Daeho looks over at her in utter confusion, softly calling her name before innocently asking her if she truly engages in private study routines herself, leaving her completely speechless. Meanwhile, as she makes her way downstairs, Yune continues to blush deeply as she reflects on her daughter's unexpected confession. She silently muses to herself, that Mia has always been such a smart and mature girl for her age, concluding that she surely knows how to manage her own routines by now. Trying to shake off her thoughts, Une washes some fresh bell peppers in the kitchen sink, letting out a soft, contemplative sigh as she gets back to preparing their meal. While cooking on the stove, she is suddenly pulled from her thoughts when Mia quietly enters the room. Wearing a comfortable beige t-shirt, Mia hesitantly asks her mother if she needs help with any of the kitchen prep. Startled by her daughter's sudden arrival, Yune awkwardly suggests that she could help by peeling some onions for the meal. Sitting down at the dining table with a knife, Mia quietly agrees, but then hesitantly asks her mother to please completely forget about the embarrassing statement she made earlier. Blushing intensely, Yune quickly reassures her daughter that she will absolutely forget all about it, leaving the two of them to prepare the meal in a quiet, highly awkward silence. Sensing his opportunity to escape the tension, Daeho quickly dashes down the stairs with his backpack, loudly calling out that he is heading out to meet up with Gobong. Dashing out of the house to escape the tension, Daeho quickly shuts the front door behind him. Hearing the commotion, Yune turns to her daughter and asks if Daeho is leaving. She then asks Mia if she even knew that he was home this whole time. Sitting at the dining table with her knife and onion, a heavily blushing Mia remains completely silent, her body flinching as she lets out a soft, nervous sigh, still deeply flustered from their interrupted stretching session. Meanwhile, Daeho runs down the sunlit street lined with beautiful sunflowers, panting heavily under the hot afternoon sun as he makes his way toward Gobong's house. Arriving at the gate, he loudly calls out his friend's name, but he is met with nothing but absolute silence. Confused by the lack of response, Daeho gently pushes the gate open, remembering that Gobong had promised to show him his new drone and wondering where exactly his friend could be. Stepping inside the courtyard, Daeho suddenly gasps in shock. He spots someone lying fast asleep on the wooden porch next to a running electric fan. Leaning in closer, his heart jumps as he recognizes the sleeping figure as Gobong's sister, Yu-hee. Because of her sleeping position and her thick white t-shirt, her inner clothing item is completely exposed to his view. Panting heavily, Daeho stares at the sight in absolute shock, realizing what he is looking at. As she remains fast asleep, his hand begins to tremble slightly, and he nervously gulps down his anxiety, silently wishing he could reach out and touch her clothing item. However, he tightly clenches his fist, fighting his impulses, and decides to gently whisper her name to wake her up. Stirring slightly, Yu-hee suddenly springs awake in shock upon realizing Daeho is standing right in front of her. Embarrassed, Daeho lets out a nervous laugh and awkwardly rubs his neck, greeting her and asking if Gobong is currently at home. Yu-hee covers her mouth in surprise before quickly recovering her composure. Sharing a warm smile, she asks if he came over to hang out with her brother, and Daeho nervously confirms that he did. She kindly invites him to come inside, explaining that Gobong actually went out to get his drone repaired but should return shortly. Yu-hee sets out 2 cold cans of juice on a table, complaining about how incredibly hot the weather is today. Sitting side by side on the shady wooden porch, Yu-hee gazes out at the sunny courtyard, casually wishing she was relaxing at the beach instead. Daeho sits beside her in completely silent nervousness, occasionally stealing a quiet peek at her as she looks away. Gathering his courage, a deeply blushing Daeho hesitantly calls her name, asking if he might be able to ask her a personal question. Noticing his nervous and hesitant posture, Yu-hee turns her head and curiously asks what is on his mind. Clutching his cold juice can with a trembling hand, Daeho struggles to find his words, stammering through her name in extreme hesitation. Finally, with his face burning completely red, he blurts out a highly personal question, asking if she has ever engaged in mobility training before. The shocking question catches Yu-hee completely off guard, her eyes widening in utter disbelief as she repeats the word back to him in sheer confusion. Looking at her with an intense, sweat-drop-laden gaze, Daeho directly asks her again if she has indeed ever participated in any stretching exercise in her life, leaving her completely speechless. An incredibly awkward silence falls over them. Blushing furiously, Yu-hee quickly turns away to take several gulps of her juice to hide her embarrassment. Seeing her reaction, Daeho grins playfully, asking if her flustered state means she has never actually done it before, and queries if she doesn't currently have a partner. Extremely flustered, Yu-hee quietly admits that she does not have a partner. Seizing his opportunity, Daeho leans in. As Yu-hee looks up in sudden shock, Daeho blushingly whispers her name and boldly asks if she would like to participate in a study session with him right now. An incredibly tense silence settles between them on the veranda. Sweating and blushing intensely, Yu-hee quietly asks if he is actually being serious. Daeho explains his logic, mumbling that if a man and a woman like each other, they are perfectly allowed to engage in study session together. He then directly confesses his feelings, admitting that he likes her and wants to share that experience with her. Yu-hee turns to him with a polite but firm smile, apologizing and explaining that she is actually far too busy right now. gently suggesting that he should probably come back later when Go-bong is actually home. Completely dejected by the polite rejection, Dae-ho can only murmur a quiet, embarrassed acknowledgement. Later that afternoon, a deeply downcast Dae-ho walks slowly down the sunny street, carrying his backpack. Feeling incredibly embarrassed, he walks along the coast, questioning if he did something wrong and wondering if she was perhaps just embarrassed because she hasn't participated in any stretching exercise yet. Back at Go-bong's house, a sudden gust of wind blows Yoo-hee's long dark hair as she sits alone on the edge of the wooden porch. As thunder rumbles ominously in the distance, a massive storm suddenly rolls in, sending pouring rain over the house. Yoo-hee lies flat on her back on the wooden veranda, letting out a quiet, thoughtful hum as she listens to the rain. Meanwhile, back in his own bedroom, Dae-ho sits quietly on the floor, blushing deeply as he retrieves the striped, light blue clothing item Go-bong gave him earlier. Holding the item close to his face, he lets out a soft, appreciative sigh, completely lost in his own playful reflections. Inside his bedroom, Dae-ho sits on the floor, holding up the striped blue clothing item Go-bong gave him, and letting out a soft sigh as he admires Yoo-hee's belongings. His quiet moment is suddenly interrupted by the sound of his door clicking open, and he quickly panics as someone calls out his name from the doorway, forcing him to frantically hide the item behind his back. Looking up, Dae-ho is startled to see Mia standing there with her arms crossed, prompting him to call her name in surprise. He nervously asks her what brings her to his room, and she hesitantly steps inside, explaining that they need to have a serious conversation. As a sudden rain shower begins to pour outside, she takes the time to explain her thoughts to him, eventually asking if he understands what she is trying to say. Mia directly lets him know that they can no longer participate in any joint study sessions together. She explains that she only agreed to help him with his initial hands-on lessons because he was completely inexperienced, but continuing to do so would only make their living situation incredibly awkward. Sitting down beside him on the bed, she gently pats his back to comfort him, gently reminding him that they are family. Curled up on his bed, Dae-ho sadly admits that he has genuine feelings for her, hesitantly asking if it is truly impossible for them to engage in their mobility training again. After a brief pause, Mia firmly confirms that they cannot, pointing out that continuing these routines would prevent him from finding a proper partner in the future. Though Dae-ho can only let out a dejected sigh, she gently expresses her hope that he understands her decision. Before stepping out of the room, she turns back to reassure him that her decision is not because she dislikes him, adding that they can still hang out whenever he wants. Shutting the door behind her, she lets out a heavy sigh of relief. Walking down the quiet hallway, Mia cannot help but wonder why Dae-ho had to look so incredibly heartbroken by her words. Re-entering her own room, she firmly resolves to herself that she must stop participating in those study sessions with him, as the rain continues to fall heavily over the dark neighborhood outside. Meanwhile, inside her own bedroom, Une quietly shuts her door, looking highly flushed and completely exhausted. Feeling incredibly warm in her red clothing item, she places a hand over her chest and quietly notes to herself how incredibly thirsty she has become. Heading out to get a drink, Une suddenly stops in surprise when she notices a figure sitting in the dim light of the living room. She is completely shocked to find Dae-ho huddled silently on the sofa in the dark, looking incredibly dejected. Stepping closer, a concerned Une softly calls out his name, asking him what he is doing awake at this late hour. To her utter surprise, Dae-ho looks up with tears streaming down his face, sobbing quietly as he struggles to formulate a response. Seeing him in such a miserable state, Une rushes over to his side, frantically asking what is wrong and if something bad has happened to him. Looking up at her with tearful, desperate eyes, Dae-ho finally gathers his courage and tearfully asks if she would be willing to assist him with his private study routine, leaving Une completely frozen in absolute shock. A bright new morning begins with a clear blue sky over the house, where the entire family is gathered together around the breakfast table. As everyone enjoys their meal, Young-gu notes how nice it is to see Sua up early this morning, suggesting that she should try to make it a habit from now on. However, Sua calmly clarifies that she did not actually wake up early but had simply stayed up all night, prompting her father to offer a nervous laugh and note that she must be quite exhausted. Young-gu then turns his attention to his wife to share some upcoming plans. Young-gu lets Une know that he has to travel into the city today for a meeting, explaining that he will be returning tomorrow. Une quietly acknowledges the news, while her husband continues to explain how his associate insisted on meeting in person this time, leaving him with no other choice. While they continue their meal, Dae-ho quietly steals a glance at Une over his spoon. Noticing his direct gaze, Une's heart begins to thump wildly in her chest as she struggles to focus on her food, feeling incredibly self-conscious under his watchful eyes. Later that afternoon, a high-tech drone flies smoothly across the bright blue sky. Out in the grassy fields, Dae-ho watches in awe and praises his close friend, Go-bong, for being so incredibly skilled at controlling the device. Proud of his latest model, Gobong happily chuckles and reassures Daeho that flying is only difficult at first, promising that he will get the hang of it in no time with just a bit of practice. Soon after, the drone lands in the grass, and Gobong picks it up, noting that the battery has completely run out. To Daeho's complete surprise, Gobong pulls out a brand new boxed drone and generously hands it to him, suggesting he take it home so he can practice on his own. Overjoyed, Daeho asks if he is truly allowed to keep it, which Gobong warmly confirms while smiling brightly. Gobong explains that Daeho is a wonderful friend who has always treated him well, prompting a touched Daeho to express his deep gratitude and note that he can always count on him. Feeling incredibly appreciative of the gesture, Daeho tells Gobong that he actually has a secret training tip he wants to teach him in return. Intrigued, Gobong eagerly asks what it is and wonders if it is something beneficial. Daeho laughs sheepishly, explaining that it is a special mobility routine that is exceptionally good for men, though he struggles to find the right words to describe it. Hearing this, an excited Gobong cheers that anything good for men must be good for him too, but Daeho simply laughs and promises to guide him through the study session at a later time. Thanking him, Gobong happily declares that Daeho is a true friend as the two walk down the path together. Eventually, the day fades away into a quiet, dark night. Back in her bedroom, Une lies flat on her back, completely unable to sleep as a strange tension washes over her. Tossing and turning in her comfortable white clothing item, she tries to quiet her racing thoughts, but she cannot shake the unsettling feeling that a bad omen is looming over the household. In the deep silence of the night, a soft click echoes as the bedroom door gently swings open, and a foot steps quietly into the dark room. Lying awake in her bed, Une's heart begins to beat incredibly fast as she immediately senses the presence of someone entering. Feeling heavily flushed and out of breath, she realizes with a sudden rush of anticipation and anxiety that Daeho has actually returned to her room. Standing beside the bed, a heavily breathing Daeho softly calls out her name, hesitantly admitting that while he tried his best to stay away, he simply could not keep himself from coming back. Listening to his honest confession, Une remains completely silent, clenching her lips as her heart continues to pound restlessly in the quiet air. Turning toward him in her light nightwear, she looks up at him with a deeply flushed, sweat-covered face, letting out a soft gasp as she gently speaks his name in return. Gulping down his intense nervousness, a highly embarrassed and sweating Daeho stares back at her, struggling to find his composure as he prepares to speak. Finally, overwhelmed by the heavy tension and his own conflicting emotions, he looks down and sincerely apologizes to Mrs. Cha for his actions, leaving the room filled with an incredibly tense silence as they face each other. On a bright and sunny morning, the quiet neighborhood is filled with the cheerful sound of birds chirping outside. Inside the house, Une wakes up feeling incredibly exhausted, stretching her sore muscles as she slowly makes her way down the hallway. Walking into the kitchen to prepare the morning meal, she washes the rice in a bowl, her mind completely occupied with worry about Daeho, which kept her from getting any rest the night before. Her quiet morning thoughts are suddenly interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps and a soft voice calling her name. Turning around in surprise, she finds Daeho standing in the kitchen, prompting her to warmly wish him a good morning. Daeho politely returns the greeting with a respectful bow, though he seems quite hesitant. Smiling gently, Une kindly advises him to return to his room for a bit since breakfast is not yet ready, but a deeply flustered Daeho remains in place, struggling to find his words. Gathering his courage, a heavily blushing Daeho steps closer and asks Mrs. Cha if she would be willing to help him because he has no idea what to do. As her heart begins to thump wildly in her chest, she asks him what is wrong, prompting Daeho to nervously admit that although she helped him with his training yesterday, his passion for his study session has become stronger again this morning. Staring at his obvious sword, a flustered Une offers a nervous chuckle and reassures him not to worry, explaining that this reaction is simply a natural sign of good health. Feeling sympathetic to his morning struggles, Une listens as Daeho hesitantly suggests that since she is always so busy, he wants to try managing the routine entirely on his own. Confused at first, she asks for clarification on what exactly he wants to do, leading Daeho to explain that he wants to learn how to perform at his best in the study session by himself. Greatly relieved by his mature decision, Une agrees that it is an excellent idea, encouraging him that he should indeed learn how to handle his personal study routine alone, promising that while it might be difficult at first, he will surely get used to it soon. Looking at him with affection, she silently marvels at how quickly the young man is growing up. However, her quiet pride is cut short when Daeho suddenly steps forward and grabs her knife from behind, pressing his personality directly against her knife. Letting out a sharp gasp of absolute shock, Une is completely caught off guard as they are immediately pulled into a highly vigorous, hands-on stretching exercise session right on the kitchen floor. Later that morning, the household gathers around the dining table to eat breakfast together. While Daeho happily devours his food with immense speed before letting out a satisfied sigh, Une watches him eat with a deeply flushed and flustered expression. Holding her chopsticks, she quietly reflects on the morning's intense workout, realizing to her astonishment that the young man seems to have boundless energy, as if he could never be fully satisfied no matter how many study sessions they complete. Deep in the quiet laundry room, Une continues to guide Daeho through an incredibly intense, hands-on personal study routine. Meanwhile, upstairs, the rest of the household prepares to head out for the day. Su-ah steps out of her room in a lovely pink dress, calling out that she is heading to the library, while Mi-ah elegantly prepares to leave as well, announcing that she is going to meet up with some friends. As both of her daughters safely exit the house and lock the front door behind them, the residence becomes completely empty and quiet. Hearing her daughters depart, Une steps out into the dark hallway, her heart thumping wildly with a mixture of relief and lingering excitement. Standing in the quiet corridor, she is suddenly joined by Daeho, who steps out to meet her with a heavily blushing and breathless expression. Staring at each other in the silent house, the intense connection between them quickly pulls them back together. Now that they have the entire house completely to themselves, they quickly retreat to her room to resume their vigor-filled private study session. Behind a slightly open door, Une lies resting on her bed in her dark clothing item, her body completely exhausted as she slowly catches her breath. Reflecting on their highly vigorous upper-lower training, she silently counts their sessions and realizes that they have completed 4 intense private study sessions in a very short span of time. Letting out a tired sigh, a worried Une wonders to herself if she can truly keep up with his boundless stamina and intense training demands when they are left all alone in the house together. Across the hall, Mia lies on her stomach on her bed, casually scrolling through her phone. Briefly peeking out her bedroom door, she lets out a soft sigh and considers how a young man at Daeho's age likely has an endless urge for training throughout the day. Concluding that it is best not to get overly involved, she decides that she should simply leave him to manage his private weightlifting training entirely on his own from now on. Meanwhile, a bright new morning brings the entire household back together around the breakfast table. Having finally returned from his business trip, Young-gu lets out a massive yawn and mutters about how he absolutely needs to take the day off to recover, complaining that his body simply isn't as resilient as it used to be. Agreeing with her husband, Yune warmly suggests that he focus on getting some proper rest while promising to cook a delicious meal specifically for him. Sitting nearby, Sua hesitantly asks her mother if she can prepare something lighter instead of meat, expressing concern that she is putting on weight. However, Mia playfully disagrees, declaring that meat is by far the best option and suggesting they prepare a ribeye steak, prompting Sua to warn her sister to watch her own figure. When Sua points out that Mia's backside has noticeably filled out, a highly defensive Mia insists that her shape is perfectly normal. As the two sisters begin to glare at each other over the table, a highly flustered Une quickly steps in to stop their bickering, urging them to drop the subject and focus on finishing their breakfast. Later that afternoon, the gentle whirring of a small motor echoes through Daeho's bedroom as his new drone flies smoothly near the ceiling. Sitting comfortably on his bed, Daeho carefully operates the controller, watching the flying device in complete silence. Eventually, his mind drifts back to his close friend, prompting him to head outside under a beautiful blue sky to see if Gobong is available to hang out. Arriving at the property, Daeho waves and loudly calls out Gobong's name, but he is met with nothing but silence. Gently pushing the green gate open, he is surprised to discover that it is locked, leaving him to wonder where his friend could possibly be. Just as he is about to turn back, a soft voice suddenly calls out his name from behind. Turning around in utter surprise, he is completely startled to find Gobong's sister, Yu-hee, standing on the street with her bicycle and a shopping bag, looking slightly flushed under her straw hat as Daeho silently recognizes her. Under a bright blue sky, Daeho and Yu-hee sit side by side on the shady wooden porch of Gobong's house. Yu-hee casually lets him know that her brother went to visit their grandmother, confirming that he will likely return quite late, and adds that Gobong is actually planning to spend the entire night there. Hearing this news, a highly flustered and blushing Daeho suddenly springs up from the porch, awkwardly stating that he will simply leave the drone with her and asking if she wouldn't mind handing it to Gobong later. Just as Daeho turns to make his quick departure, Yu-hee suddenly calls out to him to wait, leaving him completely startled. Turning back with a deeply flushed and sweating face, his heart begins to thump loudly as he asks what she wants. Standing before him, Yu-hee stares at him in a silent, highly charged moment, her own heart pounding wildly with anticipation. Turning to face him directly, she hesitatingly asks if he has ever participated in any stretching exercise before. As a shocked Daeho stammers in complete disbelief, a deeply blushing Yu-hee quietly confirms her question, leaving him entirely speechless as he admits that he indeed has. Looking away quietly for a brief moment, Yuhi suddenly stands up from the wooden porch with a determined look on her face. Standing tall in her white summer dress, she directly asks if he would like to engage in a stretching exercise session with her right now. Daeho is left completely frozen in shock, his face burning completely red as the warm evening sun begins to set over the traditional roof, leaving a highly charged silence hanging between them in the courtyard as they stare at one another. Under a peaceful sky with birds chirping over the traditional tiled roof, a deeply blushing Daeho nervously asks Yuhi what she is talking about. With her heart thumping, Yuhi quietly admits that he was correct before, hesitantly confessing that she has actually never participated in any study sessions in her life. She expresses her surprise that a young man like him already has so much prior experience with these study routines. Standing by the entrance of her traditional home, Yuhi softly reveals that if he is willing, she wants to try having a stretching exercise session with him. However, noticing his stunned silence, she quickly turns away and adds that if he is not in the right mood, he is perfectly free to head home. Terrified of losing this chance, a panicked Daeho quickly calls out her name and eagerly declares that he is absolutely ready to proceed, directly promising to guide her through their upcoming stretching exercise session. While Daeho waits, Yuhi prepares herself by heading to her peaceful, steamy traditional bathroom. Leaving her clothes in a nearby laundry basket, she slides into the warm wooden tub, soaking in the soothing hot water. As she gently scrubs her arm with a sponge, she finds herself lost in deep thought, wondering if she is truly doing the right thing. Unable to find an answer, she lets out a soft sigh and quietly pours more warm water over herself, letting the peaceful atmosphere of the steamy room calm her racing mind. Meanwhile, inside her bedroom, an incredibly nervous Daeho sits on the edge of the pink bed, his heart thumping wildly against his chest. As he waits in silence, his mind briefly wanders to memories of his previous lessons, making him feel even more flustered. Suddenly, the quiet room is broken by the sound of the door creaking open, prompting Daeho to spring up from the bed in utter surprise. Walking into the room, a freshly showered Yuhi wearing a pink thick t-shirt softly apologizes for keeping him waiting for so long. Daeho quickly reassures her that it is perfectly fine, and she quietly sits down on the chair right beside him, gently telling him that he may begin study session whenever he is ready. Gulping down his intense nervousness, Daeho slowly leans in to initiate their study session. But just as they are about to begin, Yuhi suddenly turns her head away and asks him to wait, leaving a completely bewildered Daeho frozen in utter surprise. Later, standing in the courtyard of the traditional house, a highly anxious Daeho asks Yuhi if there will be any issues or complications after their first joint stretching exercise. Putting on her shoes, Yuhi looks away shyly and reassures him that everything should be fine. Letting out a heavy sigh of relief, a blushing Daeho apologizes for his lack of experience during their mobility training. But a smiling Yuhi warmly replies that it is not his fault at all, jokingly attributing the intensity of the workout to her own tight hug. Deciding that it is time to leave, Daeho bids her farewell and turns to head home. But Yuhi suddenly calls out his name to halt him in his tracks. Blushing deeply, she gathers her courage and sincerely thanks him for his assistance today, before flashing a beautiful, warm smile and promising to see him again soon. Walking home down the quiet sunset-lit path, Daeho is filled with a sense of pure joy. Looking out at the beautiful orange sky, he cannot help but grin to himself as he proudly reflects on how well he managed to guide her through their initial stretching exercise session. Meanwhile, back at her house, Yuhi lies flat on her back on the wooden porch, raising her legs to stretch as she quietly reflects on the experience, concluding that her first stretching workout with him actually wasn't bad at all. Later that night, Mia is sitting comfortably on her bed, scrolling through her phone. Her quiet evening is suddenly interrupted by a soft knock on her door, prompting her to wonder if her mother has come to see her. Pushing the door open with a quiet click, Daeho hesitantly peeks in and asks if he can come inside, leaving Mia completely taken aback. He awkwardly steps into her room, scratching his head with a nervous chuckle as he explains that he has a rather question to ask her. Smiling knowingly to herself, Mia silently assumes that Daeho has returned because he couldn't resist her and wanted another study session, proudly resolving that she won't be easily pushed around. However, her thoughts are completely derailed when a blushing Daeho directly asks her for advice regarding the proper way to manage his protein macros and how to manage it properly. He explains his technical dilemma, wondering what a person is supposed to do if they are in the middle of a stretching exercise session. Gesturing with his hands, he admits that once he starts the study session, he struggles to stop and wonders if there is a safer alternative method they should be practicing instead. Hearing his highly specific questions, Mia's smug expression immediately vanishes, replaced by a wave of intense suspicion and irritation. Glaring at him with wide eyes, she directly demands to know if he has already engaged in a study session with someone else, leaving a panicked and sweating Daeho completely frozen in shock. Back inside Mia's bedroom at night, a tense silence fills the room as he demands to know what she is talking about. Leaning forward, she firmly instructs him to tell her the truth, realizing that something significant must have happened to him. Struggling to find his words, a nervous Daeho finally begins to explain, but Mia cuts straight to the point, directly asking him who he recently engaged in a study session with. Stunned by her bluntness, a deeply embarrassed Daeho averts his eyes and hesitantly admits that he cannot reveal her name. Mia is left completely stunned and speechless, struggling to process the reality that he actually had a study session with another girl. Pressing him once again, she demands to know if he truly completed a mobility session with someone else, and questions why he refuses to tell her identity. Looking down with a heavy heart, Daeho sincerely apologizes to her, firmly stating that he will never reveal the mystery girl's name. Letting out an exasperated sigh, Mia can only laugh at the absurd situation, realizing that he completed the study session while accidentally dropping his high-protein drink. Nodding in embarrassment, Daeho admits that she is correct and that he was never taught how to manage that part of the routine. Turning around on the bed in mild frustration, Mia chides him for his lack of caution, lecturing him that he must be far more careful and cannot simply drop his high-protein chocolate shake like that, or it'll be a waste. To demonstrate proper form, she flops face down onto her bed and explains that during a standard private study session where he lies on top of his partner, he must handle his training differently. However, as Daeho eagerly listens, Mia suddenly turns her head and notices his immediate reaction. Covering her face in deep embarrassment, she blushingly demands to know why his 20-kilo barbell has become so heavy, flusteredly reminding him that she was simply trying to give him a theoretical study session. Dismissing him quickly, Mia declares that her lesson is finished and tells him he can return to his own bedroom now. Still highly flustered, Daeho scratches his head and thanks her for her help before quietly stepping out into the hallway and closing the door behind him. Leaning against the door with a heavy sigh of relief, he walks back down the hallway, silently reflecting on how strict Mia is, thinking to himself that she behaves just like a real professional trainer. The next morning, a cheerful Une is busy in the kitchen preparing the morning meal, loudly calling out to the household that breakfast is ready. Hearing her mother's voice, Mia opens her bedroom door to head downstairs, but she quickly pauses when she spots Suah walking down the hallway. Surprised to see her sister up so early, Mia notes that she has not been skipping breakfast lately, to which a calm Suah replies that her lifestyle has been changing since her college semester ended. Watching Suah descend the stairs, a sudden, wild suspicion flashes in Mia's mind as her sister mutters that she isn't even that hungry. Terrified of her own thoughts, Mia begins to worry if Suah could possibly be the mystery girl Daeho had his private study session with, but she quickly shakes her head in utter disbelief, silently telling herself that she must be losing her mind to even consider such a crazy idea. Back at the breakfast table, the family gathers together as Yune presents a steaming, freshly cooked dish. Setting it down, she playfully notes that she isn't sure if it tastes good, but encourages everyone to try at least a bite, while a cheerful Daeho happily comments on how delicious it looks. As her husband enjoys the meal, Yune quietly celebrates to herself, glad that she took the time to watch that cooking show. Sitting next to him, Mia continues to stare at Daeho in complete silence, her mind spinning with a sudden, overwhelming suspicion. As she quietly eats her food, she tries to shake off her own wild theories, scolding herself for being hopeless and questioning if she has actually lost her mind. However, looking over at a completely happy and carefree Daeho devouring his breakfast, she cannot help but feel incredibly irritated, desperately wondering what kind of girl he could have possibly engaged in a relaxing stretch routine with. Later that morning, under a bright blue sky, Mia gets ready and announces to her mother that she is heading out to meet up with some friends. Stepping out of the front gate, her path is suddenly blocked by a young woman standing quietly on the street. Surprised by the stranger's presence, Mia directly asks who she is, prompting a flustered Yuhi to stammer nervously before asking if Daeho is currently at home. Confirming that he is indeed inside, Mia curiously asks what her visit is about and inquires if something has happened. Blushing deeply, Yuhi explains that she is his friend's sister and has simply come over to see him. Standing together on the quiet street, a sudden realization flashes in Mia's mind, and she inquires if she is actually Gobong's sister. With a polite chuckle, Yuhi warmly confirms her guess and introduces herself as Yuhi Han. Looking at her with wide eyes and a flushed face, Mia is struck with a sudden shock as everything instantly clicks into place. Recognizing with absolute certainty that this must be the mystery girl Daeho had his study session with, Mia's loud voice suddenly echoes through the boarding house as she angrily demands for Daeho to come downstairs immediately. Hearing her call, a startled Daeho rushes down the steps and asks what is wrong, prompting a deeply flustered Mia to cross her arms and tell him that a lovely guest has arrived to see him. Confused by her vague explanation, Daeho asks who this guest could possibly be, but she simply glares at him and suggests he go find out for himself. Still highly bewildered, Daeho quietly makes his way toward the front door to investigate the surprise visitor. As Daeho heads outside, Yune enters the hallway and curiously asks her daughter if someone came over to see the young man. Looking highly irritated, Mia briefly confirms it before turning around to head back upstairs, telling her mother not to worry about it in a dismissive tone. Left standing alone in the hallway, a visibly concerned Une sighs at her daughter's unusual behavior, wondering what could possibly be troubling her. Meanwhile, a curious Daeho quickly dashes out of the front gate and halts in surprise as he spots the visitor standing in the courtyard. Gasping in shock, Daeho realizes that the visitor is actually Yu-hee, who warmly returns his greeting and asks how he has been doing. Deeply blushing, Daeho asks what brings her to the house, prompting a shy Yu-hee to point down the road and suggest they go for a walk together. Daeho quickly agrees to the invitation, and the two begin walking side by side down the quiet street, with Yu-hee playfully asking if her sudden visit caught him off guard, which Daeho chucklingly confirms. Back at the house, a highly flustered and blushing Mia stands by the entrance, quietly peeking out the door to watch the two of them walk away. Crossing her arms in deep anxiety, she watches them disappear down the road, silently wondering what exactly is going on between Daeho and his new friend. Walking along a beautiful grassy path under the clear blue sky, Yu-hee casually asks Daeho if he currently doesn't own a mobile phone. Blushing slightly, Daeho confirms her suspicion, embarrassingly explaining that he has already broken his previous phones twice and is currently saving up to buy a new one. Hearing his explanation, Yu-hee reaches into her bag and pulls out a sleek white device, presenting it to him as a gift. She explains that it is simply her old phone that still works well, leaving a completely stunned Daeho to ask if this is truly for him. With a warm, bashful chuckle, Yu-hee hands it over, explaining that she wanted him to have it because she had no other way to contact him, leaving Daeho deeply touched by her thoughtful gesture. Deeply touched by her gesture, Daeho realizes that Yu-hee specifically wanted to have a way to call him. Looking incredibly flustered and embarrassed, Yu-hee quickly changes the subject, pointing down a nearby path and suggesting they head toward a special place she used to visit. Intrigued, Daeho follows her down a narrow dirt trail surrounded by tall grass, panting heavily as he tries to keep up with her energetic pace, playfully calling out for her to wait for him. Soon, they arrive in front of a massive, empty industrial complex. Yu-hee explains that the factory has been completely abandoned for a long time due to an ongoing legal dispute, a detail she originally learned from her father. Walking together into the cavernous, dimly lit interior, Daeho admits that he had absolutely no idea this place existed. Yu-hee quietly shares that she originally visited the site with Gobong when they were children, though her brother was far too terrified to ever return. Looking up at the impressive metal trusses of the ceiling, she notes how wonderful it is to see the structure in such a ruinous state. Turning to Daeho, Yu-hee curiously inquires if he feels frightened by the dark surroundings, but a sweating and blushing Daeho quickly reassures her that he isn't scared at all. Amused by his brave response, she playfully chuckles and compliments him on being exceptionally mature for his age. Daeho laughs sheepishly in response, but the playful atmosphere quickly shifts into a tense silence as Yu-hee looks up at him with intensely glowing eyes. Gathering her courage, she softly asks if he would like to teach her study session, reassuring him that she won't turn her head away if he decides to proceed. Left completely speechless by her bold invitation, a highly flustered Daeho gulps down his intense nervousness, his heart hammering wildly in his chest. Slowly gathering his composure, Daeho steps closer and gently places his hands on her study mouse, leaving the two of them to start a study session. On a bright afternoon, Mia is spending time with her friends at a local fast food restaurant, but her mind is clearly elsewhere. Sitting at the table, she constantly stares down at her glowing phone, anxiously wondering if Daeho has already returned home. She feels deeply distracted, silently convinced that he and Yu-hee have definitely gone off somewhere together, leaving her unable to focus on the gathering. Sensing her distraction, one of her friends suddenly leans in and directly asks her what she is doing, catching her completely off guard. Startled and blushing intensely, Mia quickly tries to laugh it off, nervously claiming that she is merely checking something on her phone. Her friend looks at her skeptically and gently complains about her behavior, pointing out that they have finally all gathered together after a long time and wondering what she could possibly be up to. Before Mia can respond, her friend playfully suggests that she must have a boyfriend now. Her face turns completely red, and she quickly dismisses the idea, taking a nervous sip of her drink while explaining that she has spent almost all of her time staying at home lately, meaning she has had absolutely no opportunity to meet anyone. Feeling overwhelmed by the questioning, Mia suddenly stands up, announcing that she needs to head to the bathroom, and quickly walks away. Left behind at the table, her friend watches her departure with a highly suspicious and knowing look, sensing that she is definitely hiding something. Meanwhile, as the evening sun begins to set, Daeho and Yu-hee are walking side by side down the street, enjoying a quiet stroll together. Yu-hee quietly peeks over at him with a warm blush, catching Daeho by surprise and leaving him slightly flustered. The two of them share a light giggle as they continue down the sidewalk, completely relaxed in each other's company. Their peaceful moment is suddenly interrupted by the loud screech of a bus pulling up to a nearby pedestrian crossing. As the vehicle comes to a halt, a passenger steps off the bus and onto the street. To their horror, the person who just arrived is none other than Go-bong. Go-bong freezes in place, his eyes widening in complete shock as he recognizes his close friend and his sister together. An incredibly tense silence falls over the street as Daeho and Yoo-hee turn around and find themselves staring directly at him. Looking entirely bewildered, Go-bong demands to know what the two of them are doing together. With their hearts pounding wildly in their chests, a heavily sweating Daeho and a completely mortified Yoo-hee can only stare back in utter panic, entirely unsure of how to explain themselves. Yoo-hee quickly tries to play it cool, laughing nervously as she greets her brother and explains that she simply ran into Daeho on her way back from downtown. Daeho eagerly jumps in to support her story, rubbing the back of his neck with an awkward laugh while claiming that he was actually on his way to Go-bong's house to meet up with him. After processing their explanations, Go-bong's suspicion completely melts away into a bright smile, happily concluding that the two of them must have just happened to cross paths. Seizing the moment, Yoo-hee suggests they all head home together, quietly whispering to Daeho to hurry up and join them. Daeho quickly agrees, eagerly dashing forward to catch up with the siblings. As they walk together through the grassy fields under a beautiful sunset sky, Go-bong casually mentions that Daeho does not currently own a mobile phone. Daeho explains that he actually broke his previous phone, prompting a thoughtful Yoo-hee to suggest giving Daeho one of her old working devices. Go-bong eagerly agrees that it is a wonderful idea, and they all share a happy laugh. Later that evening, the three friends gather in the backyard, happily eating watermelon, while Daeho enjoys flying his drone under the quiet twilight sky. Eventually, night falls over the neighborhood, and a heavily blushing and visibly exhausted Mia finally returns home. Stepping into the kitchen, she finds her mother stretching her tired muscles after a long day of chores. Mia hesitantly asks if Daeho has returned home yet, but her mother simply rubs her aching back with a tired sigh, confirming that he is still out. The news leaves Mia feeling incredibly disappointed and frustrated. Slowly making her way up the stairs, she mutters to herself about how annoying the younger generation can be, eventually stepping into her bedroom and closing the door behind her. Still deeply irritated, Mia slides off her jeans, left standing in her clothing item as she angrily reflects on the late hour. She flops face down onto her bed, letting out a long, restless sigh. Rolling onto her side, she continues to brood in the quiet room, highly frustrated as she wonders if Daeho is currently participating in an intense study session with his new friend. Clutching her pillow tightly in her hands, she fumes in silence, questioning how Daeho could possibly treat her this way. The next morning, the household gathers around the dining table for breakfast. While everyone else eats peacefully, a tense silence lingers as Mia sits directly across from Daeho, glaring at him intensely while they eat. Sighing to herself, she quietly fumes over his behavior, desperately wondering what exactly he was doing outside the night before. Unable to contain her frustration any longer, Mia suddenly taps her spoon down, stands up with her plate, and coldly announces that she has completely lost her appetite. After a curt thank you for the meal, she abruptly leaves the table, leaving a highly confused and slightly nervous Daeho to watch her go. Later that night, as the house goes quiet, Mia quietly makes her way down the hallway. Cautiously knocking on Daeho's bedroom door, she softly calls out his name. Hearing his response, she gently peeks inside the room, asking if he is still awake. Daeho confirms that he is indeed still up, and as Mia steps inside, she is completely shocked to find him sitting comfortably on his bed, happily typing away on a sleek mobile phone. Gasping in utter disbelief, Mia directly demands to know where on earth he managed to get such a device, leaving a highly startled Daeho to look up and innocently ask if she is talking about the phone in his hand. Daeho happily reveals that Yoo-hee was the one who gave him the phone, leaving Mia completely stunned. Her mind races as she pieces it together, directly asking if he means the same girl who came to the house earlier that afternoon. When Daeho confirms this, explaining with a bright smile that she simply had a spare device to share, Mia stands frozen, completely fuming in silence. Watching him speak so fondly, she feels a sudden wave of intense jealousy wash over her, trembling with frustration as she silently questions why he keeps repeating her name and if he really likes this other girl that much. Her mind drifts back to their school days, recalling when Daeho would constantly follow her around and always find her, reminding him that she is his sister. She fondly remembers how she used to tease him and clean up his uniform whenever he spilled food on himself. Snapping back to the present, Mia tries to regain his attention, asking if he wants to play another game of Jenga with her. However, Daeho is completely absorbed in his new phone, pointing out that it is far too late to start a game. He suggests doing it tomorrow instead, promising that he will make time for it then. Stunned and disappointed by his rejection, Mia stands in silence before turning off the bedroom light and quietly exiting. Back in her own room, she flops onto her bed in her clothing item, letting out a heavy, frustrated sigh. She lies there clutching herself, feeling deeply hurt and neglected as tears begin to stream down her face under the dark sky. As the morning sun rises and birds begin to chirp, Dae-ho is fast asleep in his bed. However, his peaceful rest is suddenly interrupted by a highly unusual, rhythmic sensation. Slowly blinking his eyes open, he groggily wakes up to a sudden shock, letting out a loud gasp as he realizes what is happening. To his utter astonishment, Mia has slipped onto his bed and is actively providing a wholesome study session in some areas of stretching, completely catching the boy off guard. Later at the peaceful family breakfast, Young-gu announces his upcoming trip to the city next week, warmly offering to bring back gifts for everyone. Hearing this, Sua excitedly asks if she can tag along with him because she is eager to watch a theater play. Mia immediately chimes in as well, eagerly declaring that she wants to go shopping for new clothes because she feels she has absolutely nothing to wear. Young-gu laughs heartily at their enthusiastic responses, scratching his head while playfully noting that was not exactly what he had in mind, but he warmly agrees to turn the trip into some quality father-daughter bonding time. Turning her attention to Dae-ho, Une kindly asks if he would like to join the trip as well. Dae-ho politely declines, rubbing his neck awkwardly as he explains that big cities tend to make him nervous, so he will pass on the offer. Amused by his response, Mia playfully wraps her arm around his head and teases him for being such a dork, jokingly warning him that he will get left behind, which only makes Dae-ho laugh sheepishly in response. After finishing her breakfast, Sua politely thanks everyone for the meal and begins walking away. As she makes her way up the stairs, she suddenly senses someone close behind her. Turning around in surprise, she finds Dae-ho trailing right after her, prompting her to stop and directly demand to know what he is doing. When Dae-ho looks back in confusion, Sua grows even more flustered, raising her voice to ask him once again what he thinks he is doing. Grabbing her shorts defensively, she coldly instructs him to stop following her so closely. A sweating and heavily blushing Dae-ho struggles to find his words, stammering that he was simply trying to go upstairs when their conversation is suddenly interrupted. Mia appears in the hallway and sternly asks what is going on, stepping between the two of them. Glaring at her sister, Mia chides Sua for her harsh attitude, reminding her that they are all family and questioning what she could possibly be thinking. Sua tries to defend herself by pointing at Dae-ho, but under Mia's firm, silent gaze, she quickly gives up, letting out an angry grumble as she stomps the rest of the way up the stairs. Muttering to herself about how full of herself her sister is, Sua disappears into her room. Turning to Dae-ho with a warm, comforting smile, Mia gently pats his head and tells him not to pay any mind to her sister's behavior, inviting him to come along with her. Eagerly agreeing, a blushing Dae-ho happily follows her. Later on, Mia is in the room brushing her teeth, dressed in a comfortable black clothing item. After she finishes and bends over the sink to spit, she is joined by Dae-ho, who quietly steps up to the open door. Standing in the doorway, Dae-ho politely asks if she has finally finished brushing her teeth, prompting Mia to turn around with a curious look on her face. Mia confirms that she has finished brushing her teeth, turning to ask Dae-ho why he is asking. Instead of replying, a nervous Dae-ho steps fully into the bathroom, closing the distance between them. Suddenly, before Mia can react, Dae-ho shows her a study session trick. Abruptly pulling away with a heavily flushed face, a startled Mia demands to know what on earth he thinks he is doing. Just as the tension rises between them, a sudden knock on the bathroom door echoes through the quiet house, causing both of them to freeze in panic. Standing outside the closed door, Sua calls out, directly asking if Mia is currently inside the room. Staring down at the shadow of Sua's feet visible under the door, both Dae-ho and Mia sweat drop in sheer terror, their hearts hammering wildly in their chests. Trying her best to hide her sheer panic, Mia manages to steady her voice and calls back through the door, confirming that she is indeed inside. Meanwhile, inside the locked room, the two of them remain frozen, with Dae-ho's hand firmly pressed against her brush, leaving them to wait in a quiet, heart-pounding silence as they pray they will not be discovered. On a bright and blazing summer day, the intense heat of the season settles heavily over the quiet neighborhood. Inside the house, the air conditioning unit hums steadily in a desperate attempt to keep the rising temperatures at bay. Resting inside her bedroom, Mia lies lazily on her bed with a comic book draped over her face, feeling completely drained by the oppressive heat and realizing that she desperately needs some ice cream to cool down. Deciding to take action, she opens her bedroom door and steps out into the hallway, making her way down toward the kitchen. Just as she passes by, Dae-ho peeks out of his room and curiously inquires where she is heading. Mia turns back to explain that she is simply going downstairs to grab a refreshing ice cream, which immediately sparks Dae-ho's excitement. Eager to join her, he quickly runs out of his room, happily suggesting that they head down together. As they walk, Mia lets out a quiet chuckle, feeling incredibly pleased that she has his undivided attention once again. However, as they begin to descend the stairs, Daeho suddenly reaches out and boldly grabs her clothing item, catching her completely off guard. Startled and blushing intensely, Mia spins around to demand what he thinks he is doing. Daeho merely offers a playful giggle, proudly declaring how much he admires her clothing item before continuing down the steps. Trying to regain her composure, a flustered Mia calls him a little kiddo and asks if he would prefer a juice bar instead. Opening the freezer, she retrieves a cold treat and hands it to a very pleased Daeho. Spotting her mother working diligently nearby, Mia playfully taps the cold popsicle against Une's face, prompting a startled gasp from the older woman. Une quickly recovers and requests one for herself as well. Sitting down at the dining table, the three of them enjoy their cold popsicles. Mia wonders aloud why her mother is working so hard in such sweltering weather, and Une explains that managing the household is no easy task, especially during the summer vacation when everyone is home and eating so much. As Une sighs about the endless kitchen chores, she turns back to the counter and gently chides Mia for not offering to help. Mia quickly defends herself, reminding her mother that she previously helped peel the onions, though Daeho quietly points out that it was actually garlic. While Une remains focused on her work at the sink, Daeho takes advantage of the distraction and slips his hand behind Mia to firmly grab her clothing item once again. Mia is instantly paralyzed with shock, biting back a gasp as she realizes how close her mother is standing. Leaning in, Daeho whispers a playful suggestion that they head upstairs to engage in another study session together. Mia is completely overwhelmed with panic and excitement, silently questioning if he has lost his mind with her mother standing right in front of them. In the foreground, Une remains completely oblivious, stretching her aching back and reflecting on how she might need to start swimming to relieve her tension. Behind her, the secret stretching exercise session continues to intensify as Daeho continues his hands-on mobility work. Completely flushed and panting heavily, Mia struggles to maintain her composure while finishing her popsicle, completely swept away by the thrilling risk of their secret study session. During their stretching session right behind her mother's back, Mia struggles to control her breathing as she lets out soft, restless sighs while eating her cold popsicle. However, the sudden intensity of their quick hands-on study session becomes too overwhelming, causing her to let out a loud, involuntary groan that echoes right through the quiet kitchen. Hearing the unexpected noise, Une immediately pauses her chores and turns around in surprise, asking what that sound was. Struggling to catch her breath and sweating profusely, a highly flustered Mia quickly tries to salvage the situation. Clutching her stomach with a forced, nervous laugh, she explains to her mother that the intense cold of the popsicle had given her a sudden and severe brain freeze. Daeho remains completely silent, calmly sucking on his own blue popsicle while quietly watching her awkward cover-up. Accepting the explanation but noticing her distress, Une gently advises her daughter that she really should be much more careful when eating cold treats in this heat. After completing an incredibly intense hands-on mobility training session in her bedroom, Daeho gently taps Mia's clothing item as she lies completely exhausted on the bed. Sitting on the edge of the mattress, Daeho gets dressed and quietly announces that he is heading out, but before leaving, he leans in to whisper a secret instruction for her to come to his room in the morning. Leaving a completely startled and breathless Mia to process his playful request, Daeho quietly slips out of the room, shutting the door behind him with a soft click. Resting on the sheets amidst her clothes, a heavily flushed Mia tries to calm her racing heart, silently reflecting on how remarkably strong and commanding Daeho has become during their study sessions. The next morning, the bright summer sun shines over the house as the family gathers around the dining table for breakfast. An awkward silence lingers in the air as Mia quietly sips her soup, while Daeho happily chews his food right beside her, occasionally stealing silent glances her way. Seeing how quickly he devours his meal, Une warmly suggests that Daeho should eat some more, which he eagerly accepts with a bright smile, handing her his empty bowl for a refill. As Une stands by the rice cooker to scoop another helping, her mind briefly drifts back to their past secret study sessions, quietly marveling at how impressive his teaching skills have become during their lessons. She quickly shakes off her distracting thoughts and gently reminds Daeho to mind his manners, prompting a sheepish apology from the young man. Watching Une present the full bowl back to Daeho with a warm smile, Mia is struck with a sudden wave of silent shock and anxiety. Mia covers her face in deep embarrassment, secretly realizing that Daeho truly possesses the kind of charm and training stamina that could easily make any woman fall for him. Noticing her sister's highly unusual behavior, Sua stops eating and directly asks what she is doing. Startled, Mia quickly tries to cover her mouth and nervously claims that she simply has no appetite. Sensing an opportunity to tease her, Sua lets out a smug chuckle, suggesting that her sister's mood is probably ruined because she pointed out her large backside the other day. Heavily blushing in embarrassment, Mia defends herself by insisting that her shape is perfectly fine, but Sua merely grins and dismisses her, claiming she only thinks so because she doesn't truly understand men. Sua continues her playful teasing, jokingly asking if Mia has met a lot of guys who prefer large backsides, prompting a frustrated Mia to argue that overall looks are what matter most, with a good figure simply being a bonus. When Sua mocks her by imitating a bad pickup line, Mia lets out a tired sigh, muttering that her younger sister would never understand. Listening to the sisters bicker back and forth, Yune sits in silent embarrassment, sweating as she reflects on how they are both well over 20 years old but still fight like toddlers. Finally, she speaks up to stop the bickering, gently reminding her daughters of their household rule against discussing such playful topics at the breakfast table. Under a clear blue sky, preparations are underway for the family trip to Seoul. Carrying a bright pink suitcase, a stylish Mia walks hum-singing through the living room, dressed in an elegant leopard print clothing item and a sleek black pants. Spotting her large luggage, Yune looks surprised and points out that since her daughter will only be away for 2 days, there is surely no need to carry so many belongings. Mia quickly laughs it off, tapping the side of her suitcase to assure her mother that it is actually mostly empty because she plans to do a lot of shopping in the city. Descending the stairs, Sua lets out a sigh and remarks that her sister's head is not the only thing that seems empty. When a glaring Mia demands to know what she means, Sua explains that visiting the capital should be about experiencing cultural events rather than just buying clothes, suggesting that shopping is something that can easily be done online. Mia rolls her eyes and argues that clothes are different because they need to be tried on in person, prompting Sua to sigh and lecture her about opportunity cost, while Mia quietly grumbles to herself about her sister always being on her case. Their bickering is suddenly cut short when Younggu opens the door to enthusiastically announce that the car is ready and it is time to depart. The sisters quickly agree, and as they head toward the door, Daeho rushes over to eagerly take the pink suitcase from Mia's hands. Pleased by his helpful gesture, Mia playfully pats his head, warmly noting that he has truly grown into a big boy, which leaves a blushing Daeho to smile sheepishly, while Sua watches them in quiet disapproval. As they step outside, Sua quietly asks Daeho to promise that he will take proper care of himself while they are gone, to which he readily agrees, while Mia cheerfully encourages him to have a great time at home. Seeing Sua's unusually serious demeanor, Mia laughs and jokingly mutters to Daeho if her sister thinks they are leaving to fight a war, finding her attitude highly amusing. Outside, Younggu instructs Sua to take the front seat, but she declines, preferring to sleep in the back instead as they greet their driver. Standing alongside Une to wave them off, Daeho listens as Younggu calls out from the window, asking him to take good care of his wife while they are away. Daeho confidently taps his chest, promising his father that he can absolutely count on him. As the car rolls away, Mia calls out one final reminder for Daeho to be a good boy and not skip his meals, while Sua quietly watches from the window. Once the vehicle is out of sight, Daeho turns to a quiet Une and gently suggests that they head back inside, to which she nervously agrees. Walking into the house, Une feels her heart begin to beat incredibly fast, realizing with a wave of nervous excitement that she and Daeho are now completely alone in the house together. Trying to steady her racing thoughts, she chides herself for being silly and heads toward the kitchen to wash the dishes, trying to distract herself with her chores. Standing at the sink in her elegant clothing item, Une is suddenly startled when Daeho quietly sneaks up right behind her, gently whispering her name. Feeling his presence, her heart pounds wildly in her chest as she slowly turns around, completely flushing as she prepares herself for a study session right there on the kitchen floor. However, her racing expectations are instantly shattered when Daeho offers a bright, innocent smile and cheerfully explains that he is actually heading out to meet his friend Go Bong, promising to return before dinner. Completely caught off guard and deeply embarrassed by her own wild imagination, a highly flustered Yune can only stammer out a quiet agreement, wishing him fun as a cheerful Daeho thanks her and dashes out the door, leaving her completely stunned and standing alone in the kitchen. Back in the quiet kitchen, Yune lets out a heavy sigh, feeling completely hopeless as she questions why she allowed herself to get so incredibly nervous in the first place. Meanwhile, under the bright afternoon sun, Daeho is walking through the grassy fields, searching his surroundings as he wonders where his guest could be, confident that this must be the correct meeting spot. His search is suddenly cut short when a familiar voice calls out his name. Turning around with a bright blush, Daeho is delighted to spot Yuhi walking toward him. Waving happily under the clear blue sky, Yuhi offers a cheerful greeting and politely asks if she kept him waiting for too long. Daeho quickly reassures her that it is no problem at all and that he had only just arrived himself. As they begin their stroll with the cheerful sound of birds chirping around them, Daeho curiously inquires about what Gobong is up to, Yoo-hee laughs and explains that her brother is currently taking a nap after staying up incredibly late the night before, which is why he completely missed her messages. Feeling slightly nervous, Yoo-hee blushingly points toward a shady grove in the distance and asks Dae-ho if he would like to go look at the trees over there, a suggestion that he eagerly accepts. Walking side by side, Dae-ho gathers his courage and gently reaches out to touch her clothing item. They halt in their tracks, sharing an incredibly tense and silent moment as they stare into each other's eyes with flushed faces. Unable to resist their mutual feelings any longer, they retreat into the privacy of the tall trees as they engage in private study session together. Later, the peaceful sound of birds chirping outside fills the neighborhood as a quiet new day begins. Inside the house, Une stands in front of her wall calendar, quietly studying the dates when she suddenly freezes in realization as she looks closely at the current day. Realizing what day it is, a sudden wave of panic washes over her, and she gasps in shock. Determined not to lose another second, she frantically ties her kitchen apron, silently telling herself that there is absolutely no time to waste. With her face flushed and her heart racing with excitement, she rushes through the kitchen, resolved to hurry and prepare herself for what lies ahead. Later that evening, as the sky turns into beautiful shades of orange and pink at sunset, Dae-ho quickly pushes the front door open, panting heavily from his rush to get back. He calls out for Mrs. Cha to announce his return, but he is met with nothing but absolute silence inside the quiet house. Looking around the dim hallway, he hesitantly asks if anyone is home, only to be answered by Une's gentle voice from nearby, teasingly reminding him that he had promised to be home in time for dinner. Dae-ho turns around, only for his eyes to widen in complete shock as he freezes in place. Standing directly behind him is Une, dressed in an incredibly stunning red clothing item. Spotting his stunned reaction, a pleased Une smiles warmly and lets out a soft giggle as she softly welcomes him back home to start their quiet evening together. As dusk settles over the neighborhood, a deeply blushing Dae-ho is left completely speechless as Une presents him with a beautifully decorated strawberry cake lit with glowing candles. Looking at his flustered face, she warmly explains that she prepared this special treat specifically for him, leaving Dae-ho to stammer that while he is deeply touched, today is not actually his birthday. Une smiles gently and explains that she knows, but points out that today is a far more significant milestone, marking the exact anniversary of the day he first arrived at their home and officially became part of their family. Touched by the realization, Dae-ho softly recalls that it was indeed during the summer when he first joined them, while Une happily suggests that even though it is just the two of them at home, they absolutely ought to celebrate. After setting the cake down on the dining table, she clasps her hands together and enthusiastically instructs him to make a wish before blowing out the candles. Dae-ho scratches his neck sheepishly, questioning if a wish is truly necessary and pointing out the irony of making a request to no one in particular when you already know there is no one around to grant it. Une lets out a light laugh at his logical thinking, but then playfully suggests that she might actually be willing to grant his wish herself. Surprised by her bold offer, an excited Dae-ho eagerly grabs her hand and directly asks if she is truly willing to do absolutely anything he wants. Flustered but smiling, she confirms her promise, prompting Dae-ho to lean forward and successfully blow out the candles. Clapping happily, Une praises his effort and curiously asks what he ended up wishing for. But a grinning Dae-ho playfully rubs the back of his neck and promises to let her know some other time, leaving her slightly flustered but understanding. Later, the two sit down at the dining table, which is loaded with a steaming hot pot and a variety of delicious side dishes. Overjoyed to see all of his favorite foods prepared just for him, Dae-ho happily digs in, and Une warmly encourages him to enjoy the meal. Devouring his dinner with immense speed, Dae-ho sheepishly giggles and comments on how amazing everything tastes, adding that he almost feels guilty enjoying such a wonderful feast all by himself while Mia and Sua are away. Sitting across from him, Une smiles to herself and reflects on how wonderful it feels to spend this rare, high-quality time sharing dinner with him. The two spend the evening laughing and enjoying each other's company, and after finishing their meal, Une takes care of the cleanup. Having placed the last of the clean dishes on the rack, she stretches her tired body with a soft sigh, concluding that it is finally time to get some proper rest. Walking down the quiet hallway, she switches off the living room lights and pauses outside her bedroom door, casting one final, quiet glance back down the dark corridor. Stepping inside, her bedroom door shuts with a quiet click. Standing in the solitude of her dark room, Une looks out at the starry night, letting out a soft sigh as she realizes how unusually quiet and desolate the empty house feels with only the two of them inside. Meanwhile, in the bustling city of Seoul, the family trip is proving to be quite exhausting. Walking out of the theater, Young-gu lets out a tired groan, only to be met with Mia's irritated complaints about the film being incredibly boring and her questioning why they had to travel all the way to Seoul just to watch a movie. Muttering an irritated sigh under his breath, Young-gu can only listen as the family makes their way through the city streets at night, feeling completely drained by the long day. Back at their hotel, Sua has already fallen fast asleep, but an active Mia lies awake tapping on her phone, silently planning out all the clothes she intends to buy the next day. Her thoughts are interrupted by the sound of the door opening as her father peeks in to ask if they are still awake. Sitting up, Mia dryly advises him that it has been a long day and suggests he should simply go to sleep himself, before suddenly turning a highly suspicious gaze on him and demanding to know where he is secretly planning to sneak off to while they are asleep. Caught completely off guard, a sweating Younggu nervously stutters that he has no idea what she is talking about and has no plans to go anywhere. Amused by his obvious guilt, Mia questions why he is stuttering before dismissing the subject, casually demanding that he provide her with more cash for her shopping trip tomorrow. Yielding to his daughter's demands, a sweating Younggu laughs nervously and offers his credit card instead before quickly wishing her a good night and making his escape. Turning back to bed, Mia playfully shoves her sleeping sister, warning her that she will be keeping a close eye on her. Walking down the dimly lit hallway, a deeply unsettled Younggu sighs and mutters to himself about how creepy his own daughter can be. He pulls out his phone to call Mr. Park, reluctantly canceling their late-night plans and admitting that managing his daughters is proving to be far more difficult than he expected. Agreeing that it is not easy, he hangs up the call and decides to just head to bed. While back in the room, Mia settles down to sleep under the warm lamplight. Back at the boarding house, however, a very different kind of tension is unfolding. Inside her dark bedroom, Eun-ae finds herself caught in the middle of a highly vivid and intense dream. In her active imagination, she is lying on her bed, completely flushed and panting heavily, while Daeho is teaching her stretching exercise. On another bright and sunny morning, Yoon-ae serves a fresh, steaming plate of curry at the dining table, warmly encouraging Daeho to enjoy his meal. Still feeling incredibly flustered from the events of the previous night, she blushingly promises that she will also prepare some delicious snacks for him later. Genuinely touched by her kindness, Daeho smiles brightly and thanks her before suddenly remembering their earlier promise. Looking across the table, he hesitantly brings up the wish he made the night before, asking if she would be willing to grant it today. Startled by his sudden request, a deeply blushing Eun-ae takes a bite of her food and gently agrees, promising that she will grant his wish whenever he wants, which prompts a delighted Daeho to eagerly hold her to her word. However, when Daeho reveals the exact details of his wish, Eun-ae is left standing in her bedroom in absolute shock, sweating profusely as she questions if he truly wants her to wear those specific clothes. With a playful grin, Daeho confirms her fears, holding up a set of clothing items along with a pair of silver shoes and directly requesting that she wear them for the entire day. Looking at the clothes, a flustered Eun-ae gasps as she recognizes them as Mia's clothes, pointing out how impossible it is for her to wear her daughter's clothing item since they surely would not even fit her. Unbothered by her objections, Daeho holds out the shoes and enthusiastically insists, declaring that this particular outfit is by far the best of all her clothes and that he truly wants to see her in it. Clutching the fabric in complete bewilderment, Eun-ae admits that she has absolutely no idea why he would make such a bizarre wish, especially since wearing these clothes does not benefit him in any way. Daeho merely chuckles and sweetly explains that he simply wants to see her dressed in beautiful clothes, leaving a sighing Eun-ae to finally relent and head off to change. After waiting patiently in the hallway, Daeho hears Eun-ae's soft voice calling out to let him know she is finally finished and inviting him to come inside. With a wide smile, Daeho gently pushes the door open with a quiet creak, only to freeze in absolute, wide-eyed shock at the sight before him. Standing in the middle of the room, a deeply blushing and highly self-conscious Eun-ae is dressed head to toe in her daughter's clothing item. Daeho is completely starstruck, loudly cheering in excitement as he praises her stunning looks and excitedly declares that she looks just like a beautiful college student. Embarrassed, Eun-ae covers her face and begs him to stop teasing her, before quietly asking if he is finally satisfied now that she has kept her promise. Next morning, Daeho wakes up in a fantastic mood. Lying comfortably in his bed with a wide smile, he happily recalls how Mrs. Cha thanked him, feeling deeply satisfied that he was finally able to meet her expectations during their recent encounter. Reflecting on their interaction, Daeho realizes that while he originally assumed she only agreed to the lesson out of a sense of duty, she actually seemed to thoroughly enjoy it. His playful train of thought is suddenly cut short when his phone begins to buzz loudly on the bed. Picking up the call, he groggily answers, only to hear Gobong on the other end. Out in his courtyard, Gobong is relaxing on a wooden platform next to a massive watermelon. Fan in hand, he cheerfully asks if Daeho is busy and invites him to come over, explaining that he and his sister, Yoo-hee, cannot possibly finish the giant fruit by themselves. In the background, Yoo-hee plays a traditional string instrument while looking slightly anxious. Hearing the invitation, Daeho is highly tempted but finds himself hesitating. Meanwhile, back in the kitchen, Mrs. Cha is busy preparing food while wearing the stylish clothes Daeho requested. complete with elegant high shoes and a thick t-shirt. On a phone call of her own, she politely declines an invitation, explaining that since her family is currently away in Seoul, she needs to stay at home today. After hanging up, she lets out a heavy, flushed sigh. Adjusting her clothes, she quietly reminds herself that she promised to wear this thick outfit until the evening. At the exact same moment, Go-bong relays the disappointing news to his sister that Dae-ho won't be able to make it over because he has to remain at home. Back at Go-bong's house, Go-bong happily digs into the fresh watermelon and offers some to Yoo-hee. However, Yoo-hee is completely distracted, plucking the strings of her instrument with a downcast expression. She silently wishes that Dae-ho could have been there to enjoy the treat with them, resolving to find another opportunity to play her music for him. Go-bong remains completely oblivious, simply cheering her on with a bright smile. The scene shifts to the bustling city of Seoul, where a large theater building stands tall under the afternoon sun. Mia and Sua are walking down the street after a highly successful shopping trip. Carrying several colorful bags, a relaxed Mia stretches her arms and happily notes how satisfying the shopping trip was. Behind her, Sua struggles with the load, letting out a tired sigh about how heavy the bags have become. Looking for some relief, a thirsty Mia openly wishes that Dae-ho were there to help them carry everything, prompting Sua to silently grumble about her sister's lack of helpfulness. Smiling to herself, Mia playfully reflects on the young man, secretly assuming that his energy levels must be bursting after going several days without any joint workouts. Suddenly, she squats down to adjust her bags with a happy squeal, leaving a highly confused Sua to stare at her in utter bewilderment. Little do they know, back at the quiet house, a highly intense study session is indeed underway. Shortly after, a peaceful atmosphere returns to the dining room. Wearing her kitchen apron, Mrs. Cha quietly eats her dinner, while Dae-ho happily sits beside her, devouring his meal with an immense appetite. Watching him eat so eagerly, Mrs. Cha warmly asks if the food is to his liking. Dae-ho flashes a bright, happy smile, enthusiastically confirming that it tastes amazing. Pleased by his response, she tells him to enjoy his meal and promises to prepare another delicious treat for him tomorrow, prompting a polite and grateful thank you from the young man. Later that night, Mrs. Cha is back in her quiet bedroom, dressed in a comfortable dark t-shirt. Tossing and turning on her sheets, she lets out a heavy sigh of relief, thankful that she was finally able to take off those clothes. As her muscles throb from the sheer exertion, she quietly reflects on the day's events, realizing she has completely lost count of how many intense learning sessions they completed. Flinching slightly from her sore muscles, she confidently assumes that since Dae-ho studied more than enough during the afternoon, he surely won't bother her tonight. However, her quiet relaxation is suddenly interrupted by the soft creaking of her bedroom door. Sitting up in bed with a gasp of surprise, she spots Dae-ho cautiously peeking inside while holding his pillow. When he sheepishly asks if she is already asleep, her heart begins to thump wildly in her chest. She silently marvels at his boundless stamina, realizing she had completely underestimated his recovery speed. Blushing deeply, Mrs. Cha demands to know what is on his mind. Standing in the doorway, a highly flustered Dae-ho explains that since Mr. Cha and his sisters are returning from their trip tomorrow, they won't have any more opportunities to study together. Because of this, he simply wants to sit down by her table for just a brief moment. Touched by his sincere confession, Mrs. Cha feels her defenses melt away. Softly tapping the mattress beside her, she warmly invites him to come up and join her on the study table. Later, another bright afternoon settles over the coast. Inside the boarding house, Dae-ho and Mrs. Cha are relaxing at the dining table. When she asks if he has finished assembling his new computer, Dae-ho admits he is still working on it. Their quiet conversation is suddenly interrupted by the sound of the front door clicking open. To their surprise, Mia excitedly bursts into the room, holding her shopping bags and loudly announcing her return from Seoul. Startled, Mrs. Cha pauses her apple slicing as Mia playfully asks Dae-ho if he behaved himself while she was away. Thrilled to see her, an excited Dae-ho dashes forward and wraps his arms around her in a warm hug. A pleased Mia giggles, asking if he missed her, which Dae-ho eagerly confirms before asking if she had a fun time in the capital. Just behind them, Sua walks into the room, rolling her eyes at their dramatic display and jokingly asking if this is a reunion of separated families. Mia defends their affection, teasingly calling her sister cold-blooded for not understanding deep family bonds. But Sua simply ignores her and stomps upstairs. Mrs. Cha warmly welcomes her daughters back and inquires about her husband's whereabouts. Right on cue, a heavily sweating Younggu enters the house, loaded down with heavy bags and groaning that everything he carries is for Mia. Paying no attention to the commotion, Mia gently pats Dae-ho's head, promising him some special chocolates from Seoul and suggesting they head upstairs together, which an excited Dae-ho readily accepts. Watching the two of them happily rush up the steps, Mrs. Cha is left standing by the door holding her packages. She lets out a dejected sigh, feeling slightly hurt that neither of them even paused to say hello to her. Once they are safely in her gym room, Mia wastes no time and immediately initiates a highly wholesome fitness lesson with Daeho. However, their plans are instantly shattered when Sua's voice suddenly echoes through the house, calling out to her father. Sua loudly requests that her dad carry her heavy astronomical telescope upstairs immediately. Hearing the sudden request, a panicked Daeho and Mia quickly scramble to hide their study activities, realizing they will have to continue their core exercises another time. Downstairs, a heavily sweating and trembling Yoongu slowly drags the massive box telescope up the stairs, complaining that it feels like it weighs an absolute ton. Sometime later, under a beautiful sunny sky, a fresh afternoon begins at the boarding house as Mrs. Cha loudly calls out that lunch is ready. She presents the family with a delicious tray of cold noodles, explaining that she made them specifically to help everyone cool off in the sweltering heat, prompting excited cheers from the table. While slurping down her noodles, Sua directly asks her father why he is still relaxing at home at this hour, jokingly questioning if his company went bankrupt or if he somehow lost his job. Sweat dropping at his daughter's blunt questioning, Yoongu quickly defends himself, explaining that his presence has nothing to do with work. Instead, he reveals that their relatives, Yoon-nim and Go, are arriving today. Sua and Mia are surprised, with Mia asking if Yoon-nim's husband from Taiwan is coming along. Mrs. Cha confirms, explaining that the couple came to Korea for their vacation and will be staying at the house for a few days. Turning her attention to Daeho, Mrs. Cha asks if he remembers Yoon-nim. Daeho blushingly confirms that they used to be close, fondly recalling how they would play video games together before she moved to Taiwan. He calculates that since he hasn't seen her in nearly 6 years, she must be about 19 years old by now. Mia playfully rubs his head, teasingly asking who he is calling a little kid when he is barely older himself. Suddenly, the loud chime of the doorbell echoes through the house, signaling their guest's arrival. Excitedly, Yoongu instructs everyone to head over and welcome their visitors, playfully tapping his wife's shoulder as they head toward the door. As they walk, Sua firmly warns Mia that she refuses to share her bedroom with Eun-nim because she is far too busy writing her university papers, prompting Mia to chide her for being so selfish. The front door swings open, and a stylish foot steps inside. Carrying a large pink suitcase, a young woman steps into the hallway, warmly greeting her aunt and uncle. Standing in the back, Daeho is left completely speechless, staring wide-eyed at her incredibly mature figure as she makes her grand entrance. Stepping cheerfully through the door, Eun-nim flashes a bright wink and a playful salute, happily announcing her arrival to the household. Standing in the hallway, she holds on to her pink suitcase, looking exceptionally stylish and mature in her short denim shorts and yellow top. Mia and Sua can only stare in silence, completely taken aback by her stunning transformation. Standing nearby, Daeho is left pointing a trembling finger in disbelief, struggling to find his words as he hesitantly asks if she is truly the same Eun-nim he remembers from their childhood. She turns her attention directly to him. With a beautiful, warm smile that instantly brings back their old connection, she softly greets him, signaling the start of an exciting new chapter in the boarding house. Daeho continues to stare at Eun-nim in disbelief. Pointing a hesitant finger, he stammers, asking if she is truly the same little girl who used to play video games with him. In response, Eun-nim merely grins and steps closer, playfully patting his head while laughing that he hasn't changed a bit, even if he did manage to grow a little taller. Looking at her flushed face, Daeho remains in shock as Eun-nim giggles, noting how he used to be just a baby compared to how he looks now. Standing proudly in front of him, Eun-nim cheerfully explains that she grew up remarkably fast after moving to Taiwan. Turning to Mia and Sua with a bright smile, she happily greets them, noting that it has been a very long time since they last saw each other. Still slightly taken aback by her transformation, Mia notes how much she has grown, while Sua calmly welcomes her back. When Mia curiously inquires about her life abroad, Eun-nim shrugs it off as nothing special. Stepping in to guide their guest, Mrs. Cha suggests that she unpack her belongings first. Eagerly agreeing, a smiling Eun-nim expresses her hope that they can make wonderful memories together during her 5-day stay. However, the peaceful mood is instantly broken when Mrs. Cha suggests that Eun-nim can share a room with Mia. Utterly shocked, Mia loudly protests the decision, demanding to know why her mother made the arrangements without consulting her. Stretching her arms lazily, Sua explains that she has a looming contest deadline and desperately needs her privacy to finish her piece, leaving a highly frustrated Mia to glare at her in anger. Sensing the tension, a tearful Eun-nim sadly asks Mia if she doesn't want to share a room with her. Feeling instantly guilty under her puppy dog gaze, a flustered Mia quickly backtracks, assuring her that it is no problem at all and that they will have a great time sleeping in the same room. Delighted, Eun-nim throws her arms around Mia in a tight hug. Still, as she holds her guest, Mia privately worries that having a roommate for 5 days will seriously limit her personal freedom. Later that afternoon, Daeho and Unnim sit side by side on his bed, catching up in a much more relaxed setting. Looking at him thoughtfully, Unnim compliments him on how cool he is, admitting she fully expected him to still behave like a little boy. Smiling warmly, Daeho explains that since he is officially 20 years old now, he makes an effort to take full responsibility for his words and actions. Deeply impressed, Unnim playfully pats his thigh, laughing that he has completely changed and grown incredibly mature. Blushing slightly as she looks at his handsome face, Unnim admits that she wants to turn 20 as fast as possible so she can grow up too. Seeing her eagerness, Daeho clears his throat and begins a highly serious lecture, explaining that being a big person means stepping out of one's safe zone and facing the harsh realities of life. Unbothered by his lecturing, Unnim suddenly cuts him off and asks him to take her to the beach tomorrow. Stunned by the sudden request, a flustered Daeho asks for clarification, but Unnim eagerly confirms her plans, explaining that returning to her old home made her desperate to visit the shore. As night falls over the quiet house, Daeho lies flat on his back in bed, lost in his own peaceful reflections. Staring up at the dark ceiling with a warm smile, he quietly marvels at how quickly his cute little childhood friend has grown up. While lying in bed, a smiling Daeho quietly reflects on how fast children grow. Meanwhile, in Mia's bedroom, Unnim and Mia are lying down together, resting in their comfortable nightwear. Unnim warmly thanks Mia for agreeing to come to the beach tomorrow, noting that the trip would be incredibly boring without her. With a playful grin, Mia giggles and replies that she is happy to join, explaining that she couldn't possibly let the little kids go out there all by themselves. When Unnim suggests that it would be even better if Sua joined them too, Mia quickly tells her to forget about it, pointing out that Sua is currently the busiest person in the entire house. Down the hall, Sua is indeed working diligently at her desk, typing away at her computer. Taking a quick break to gulp down a cold drink, she lets out a tired sigh, trying to stay focused on her university project under her unzipped black jacket. The next morning, under a beautifully bright sun, the group finally arrives at the sandy beach. Running toward the sparkling blue water, a highly excited Unnim throws her arms up, cheering that the trip is fantastic. While Daeho watches her run with a bright smile, Mia stands beside him with her arms crossed, looking on in amusement. Mia notes how incredibly excited their guest has become. Nearby, Mrs. Cha stands with them in a dark dress, letting out a heavy, flushed sigh. Noticing her distress, Mia curiously inquires what is wrong, prompting her mother to complain that they should have just enjoyed themselves without dragging her along, since she feels far too old to get crazy at the beach. Gently pushing her mother toward the changing area, Mia insists that they desperately need a guardian and tells her to go change into her swim t-shirt first. Meanwhile, a shirtless Daeho relaxes on a green blanket under the shade of a large beach umbrella. Left sitting alone, Daeho wonders what is taking the women so long, quietly realizing that girls always take much longer to get dressed. His thoughts are instantly shattered when Mia approaches, playfully teasing him for changing so quickly. Daeho is left completely frozen in absolute shock, his face burning bright blue as he catches sight of her stunning, thick white t-shirt. Trembling with excitement, he can only stutter out a soft compliment, telling her she looks absolutely gorgeous. Highly amused by his flustered reaction, Mia teases him for having such a keen eye for girls. Suddenly, a blushing Unnim joins them, wearing a cute pink and black rash guard. She lets out a soft giggle, playfully promising Daeho that she will show him her swim clothes next year. With a joyful jump, she runs off toward the water, cheerfully noting that a rash guard is much better anyway since it protects her skin, leaving Mia to let out a quiet sigh as their beach adventure officially begins. Moments later, Mrs. Cha finally emerges from the changing area, looking incredibly embarrassed as she walks down the steps in her t-shirt. Although she wore her swimming clothes, she has tightly wrapped herself up in a thick brown t-shirt, muttering that she refuses to get into the water and wondering why they forced her to wear such an outfit. Staring wide-eyed from the bottom of the steps, Daeho is completely captivated, while Mia lets out an irritated groan. She loudly chides her mother for covering herself up, questioning what the point of wearing a swimsuit was if she was just going to hide it, declaring the whole situation to be highly disappointing. Retreating to the blanket under the shade of their umbrella, an embarrassed Mrs. Cha curls up tightly, insisting that she will simply stay behind to watch their belongings while they go have fun. Giving up on her mother, Mia turns to Daeho with a knowing, playful smile. Leaning in, she quietly suggests that the two of them leave to go find some snacks. Sneaking away from the crowd, they find a secluded spot behind some massive, rocky cliffs on the beach to find some crabs. At the sunny beach, the group enjoys the water, but Unnim quickly notices that Daeho and Mia are taking quite a long time to return. Smiling to herself, she playfully decides to head out and search for the missing duo. However, a heavily blushing Une stops her in her tracks. She insists on going to look for them instead, instructing Unnim to step out of the water and stay behind to guard their beach belongings. Heading into the nearby town streets, Yune begins to wander around in only her brown-red t-shirt. She quickly realizes she is lost, unable to find the local convenience store she thought was right around the corner. As she walks down the public road past fully clothed pedestrians, she begins to feel incredibly self-conscious and deeply regrets bringing a thick cover-up for her body. With every step attracting eyes, she is left feeling highly embarrassed and flustered. Her discomfort only worsens when a loud stranger lounging on a nearby park bench calls out to her, calling her gorgeous and asking where she is heading. Blushing intensely, Yune nervously crosses her arms and tries to laugh it off, claiming he must have mistaken her for someone else. Feeling increasingly uneasy around the strange man, she decides she needs to leave the area immediately. Before she can walk away, the man asks if she really walked all the way from the beach just to find a store. Stepping forward, he tells her to follow him, claiming the convenience store is just ahead. Though highly hesitant, Yune desperately wants to find the shop and reluctantly agrees to let him lead the way. As they walk down the path together, the man asks if she is single. When a startled Une clarifies that she is actually married, the man replies that married women are very good for fitness training. The unexpected comment catches Yune completely off guard, leaving her utterly confused and highly unsettled as they continue down the street.
Behind the giant rocky cliffs along the shore, the sound of the ocean waves crashing against the stone provides the perfect cover. Mi-ah and Daeho stay hidden from view, deeply focused on an incredibly wholesome back workout together. Meanwhile, back on the green mat, Unnim sits all by herself, feeling increasingly bored. She stares down at a tiny crab scuttling across the hot sand, trying to figure out what could possibly be keeping everyone. From under the shade of the umbrella, she gazes across the empty ocean and realizes her Antune went to search for the missing duo but has now vanished as well. Because they have been gone for far too long, a highly flustered Daeho nervously points out that they are running incredibly late. Mia remains flushed from their gym session, yet she calmly agrees and tells him that they need to get moving right away. Daeho blushes deeply in utter disbelief, asking Mia if she is seriously planning to head back to the group with his special goods still left inside her bag. With a highly mischievous grin, Mia giggles and playfully tells him that daring little thrills like this are exactly what a trip to the summer beach is all about. She casually reasons that since she plans on staying in the ocean water all day anyway, there is no practical reason to waste time washing the water out. They finally step back onto the main path, where Mia tells Daeho they should head off to find the convenience store together. Meanwhile, the strange older man leads a highly anxious Yune to the entrance of a shop, encouraging her to step inside with him. The man boasts with a wide grin that this is the closest store to the beach area. Yune takes a look around the brightly lit interior and instantly gets a very strange, uneasy feeling about the shop. There is no sign of Daeho or Mia, so she quietly figures the kids must have gone somewhere else, totally oblivious to how shocked the cashier is by her sudden appearance. The strange man overhears her concern, asking if she is looking for her kids and inquiring where exactly she lost track of them. Her cheeks flush with embarrassment as Une quickly clarifies that she did not actually lose a child, explaining that they are already fully grown up and over 20. With a sly grin, the man chuckles and tells her that she has nothing to worry about in that case. He opens up a nearby freezer chest and insists that they grab some ice cream before leaving, gesturing for her to come over and pick one out. Yune feels increasingly uncomfortable, so she politely declines the offer, stating she is perfectly fine and suggesting he enjoy the treat by himself. The man ignores her polite refusal and grows pushy, complaining that she is making him feel embarrassed and demanding that she just grab a treat. Suddenly, he physically pushes Yune forward, forcing her to lean deep over the freezer chest as she startledly begs him to wait. With a heavy sigh and a deeply flushed face, she reluctantly gives in, repeating that she was genuinely fine without anything. As she bends far forward into the freezer to pick out an ice cream, her highly proper posture is completely exposed. The strange man stands directly behind her and lets out a creepy, satisfied chuckle, thoroughly enjoying the view. With no other choice left, Une reluctantly starts eating the sweet popsicle to cool off. As they walk side by side down the busy sidewalk, a heavily blushing Une finds herself completely overwhelmed by how incredibly hot the day has become. The man leans in uncomfortably close to her face, smugly noting her reaction and teasingly asking if she is actually secretly enjoying herself. Highly flustered, Une nervously laughs it off, quickly claiming that her flushed face is entirely due to the extreme heat of the weather. The man seizes the opportunity, pointing toward a secluded alleyway and suggesting they swing by there, claiming his private shop is located just down the path. Une stops in her tracks with deep suspicion, demanding to know what kind of shop he has and questioning why she should even go there. Without warning, the man aggressively grabs her arm, startling her completely. He pulls her forward, telling her she will find out soon enough and reassuring her that the place is very close. Une grows terrified by his sudden forcefulness, desperately pleading with him to stop and let go of her. The man ignores her cries and drags her down the empty path, dismissively reminding her that he even bought her an ice cream to justify his actions. She struggles to break free from his grip, desperately begging him to let her go and demanding to know what is wrong with him. When they stop in front of a secluded door, the man gestures toward it and coldly tells her they have arrived. He demands that they get inside the room immediately. Une gasps in shock from the shove, begging him to wait as he aggressively pushes her toward the entrance, telling her to hurry up. Tears well up in her eyes while she pleads with him to stop, completely terrified of what is about to happen. The man takes one final peek outside through the doorway with a creepy grin, making sure the coast is entirely clear. With a loud metallic clank, the heavy door slams completely shut, sealing them inside. The two wander through the town in their swimwear, where Daeho stands silently while passing pedestrians stare at them in total confusion. He lets out a heavy sigh, unable to comprehend how their simple search turned into such an awkward situation. Mia looks around in frustration, noting that the convenience store was supposed to be right in this area. A deeply flustered Daeho agrees, leaving Mia to reluctantly admit that they are completely lost. She runs a hand through her hair, deciding they have no other choice and suggesting they simply keep moving forward. Onlookers are completely stunned as the pair stroll down the busy street, gazing at Mia walking around openly in her white swimsuit. She lifts her long hair off her neck with a soft sigh, complaining about how ridiculously hot the weather is. Every single passerby on the sidewalk cannot help but stare at her in complete disbelief. Daeho realizes they have wandered way too far from the beach, noticing that nobody else around them is wearing swimwear. He marvels at how Mia manages to stay so completely calm and composed despite all the intense attention. A deep blush covers his face as he whispers to Mia that everyone on the street is staring right at her. Juri suddenly turns around in shock as she catches sight of them walking down the road. She recognizes her friend immediately, calling out Mia's name in utter disbelief. With a raised finger, Juri demands to know what on earth Mia is doing there. A flustered Mia is caught completely off guard, stammering while Juri gasps at her daring jacket outfit. Juri stares in total shock, asking Mia what on earth she is wearing and if she has completely lost her mind. Mia tries to play it cool, nervously replying that she is fine and just came straight from the beach. Juri repeats the word beach in disbelief as they stand together on the pavement. She casts a bewildered glance at her friend, asking how she could possibly end up all the way here. Mia brushes off her reaction, casually explaining that she is simply looking for a convenience store. Juri lets out a sigh and calls Mia completely pathetic for wandering around like this. She leans in to whisper nervously to Mia, asking if the guy with her is her brother. Mia confirms that he is Daeho, reminding Juri that she must have seen him when she previously visited her house. Then Mia introduces Juri Kang to Daeho, prompting him to politely bow his head and greet her. Juri flashes a bright grin and warmly welcomes him back, mentioning that they actually met once before when he was still just a little kid. She looks down at Daeho, noting how much he has grown up and asking how old he is now. Daeho blushes brightly and replies with a shy giggle that he has turned 20. Juri chuckles affectionately, teasing him about how cute he is while Mia watches them. Mia asks Juri if she knows where the convenience store is, prompting Juri to question if she really intends to go inside wearing only a jacket, though Mia stubbornly insists she just wants directions. Juri lets out a heavy sigh, calling Mia incredibly hard-headed for refusing to back down. Mia realizes they need to wrap up their conversation, noting that they should get going. She smirks as she turns to leave, bidding Juri goodbye, leaving Daeho looking on quietly as Juri agrees. Juri waves her hands playfully, laughing and promising to stay in touch while telling them to take care. As they walk away, Juri silently stares after Daeho with an intense, intrigued gaze. High above the town, the bright summer sun shines down over the clear blue sky. The ocean breeze brushes against her skin, prompting Onim to sit up and wonder what could possibly be taking everyone so long. She hugs her knees tightly on the beach blanket, calling out for Daeho while feeling increasingly lonely and confused about where he went. She sits all by herself in the heat, beginning to feel completely abandoned by the rest of the group. Meanwhile, along the commercial street, Daeho and Mia finally reach the local convenience store. The two make their way back through town toward the beach, carrying shopping bags filled with refreshments. Daeho nervously points out that they are running very late and that Mia's mother is waiting for them. He casts a close glance in her direction, left completely awestruck by Mia's striking appearance. Mia tucks her hair behind her ear, wondering to herself why everyone on the street keeps staring at her. Suddenly, Daeho reaches out and firmly grabs hold of Mia's wrist. The sudden action surprises Mia, who turns back to look at Daeho and asks what is wrong. Daeho looks around anxiously, asking Mia to step over with him for just a moment. Mia gasps as Daeho pulls her toward him, asking in confusion what is wrong with him. She feels flushed and pants heavily, demanding to know what he is doing as he focuses directly on her face. A quiet karaoke booth door stands closed at the end of the tiled hallway. Sweat trickles down Une's flushed face as panic sets in. She stares ahead in total confusion, completely bewildered by what is happening. Her legs tremble on the tiled floor inside the enclosed room. Utter disbelief fills her eyes as she gazes around the space, wondering how she ended up in this place. A sinister grin spreads across the strange man's face as he holds up 2 cans of energy drinks. He sets a cold can down on the table with a sharp tap and insists they share a drink, leaving a thoroughly unsettled Une speechless. The older man smirks boastfully, showing off his place and asking Une if his establishment is really all that bad. Une sits awkwardly on the couch, completely bewildered by the sudden realization that he actually owns a karaoke business. The man leans back onto the sofa and nervously admits that even he was initially confused about how to explain everything. Tears begin to stream down his face as he emotionally recalls that he was never actually homeless. In a meta flashback, an artist works diligently at a computer desk, typing away as he designs the character as a lazy, Hawaiian shirt-wearing guy per his storyboards. The man gulps down his drink while complaining that the illustrator struggled immensely to draw his scene, leaving Une utterly baffled by his strange story. He wipes a tear from his face, explaining how the artist struggled to visualize him as deadlines approached. In a sudden flashback, a homeless man huddles beneath a dark blanket in the pouring rain, taking cover under a playground structure. The owner notes that everything turned out fine in the end, allowing the creator to finish the work quickly without any further issues. Une stares ahead in total silence, completely stunned and speechless by his bizarre explanation. She nods along politely, though she secretly admits to herself that she has no clue what he is rambling on about. The man continues his bizarre rant, blaming the author for poorly designing the plot and messing up the story progression that brought her to his shop. He insists the illustrator should share the blame as well, getting visibly annoyed as he complains about the production team. A flashback reveals a stressed female artist clutching her head at her desk, overwhelmed by overthinking the storyboards late at night. The author adjusts his glowing glasses, casually reasoning that creative misunderstandings like this just happen when working on an online webtoon for a long time. He explains that both creators regretted their mistakes and promised to shape up for future chapters. He springs up with a grin, declaring that he decided to forgive them for the mix-up. With intense passion, he stresses to her that from this moment on, he is officially just the lazy Hawaiian shirt-wearing karaoke owner. He leans over the table with a wide, creepy smirk, asking her what she thinks now that everything is finally clear. Une offers an awkward, nervous smile and lets out a soft sigh, privately questioning what on earth he means by authors and illustrators. The man hands over a microphone, telling her to forget the backstory and just start singing. Une grips the mic hesitantly while the man smiles, reminding her that singing is the whole reason they came here. Outside, the sun shines brightly above the tall urban buildings that line the street. Mia rests her hands on our boy Daeho's head, breathless as she nervously asks if they are really okay doing their gym workout right here. Back inside the dimly lit booth, Une closes her eyes and sings into the microphone while the owner lounges casually on the table behind her. Une pours her heart into the song, determined to do her best despite the awkward situation. The owner claps his hands in delight and enthusiastically praises her incredible singing skills. Une blushes deeply and touches her face, flustered by his overwhelming compliments. Springing up with an eager grin, the man announces that she passed the test and offers her a job as a hostess at his shop. Une turns around in utter shock, completely taken aback by his sudden job offer. Leaning in, the man explains that her role would be assisting customers in their rooms by singing and playing the tambourine. He pitches the position as a fun way to enjoy herself and earn money at the same time. Une steps back nervously, quickly declining his offer by explaining that she is far too busy with house chores to take a part-time job. Handing over a colorful karaoke business card, he questions her decision during an economic slowdown and urges her to call whenever she changes her mind. He sighs as Une examines the card, admitting that his sales dropped without a quality hostess and that he knew he had to recruit her the second he laid eyes on her. He brushes off the awkward misunderstanding and expresses his hope to see her again soon. Une reluctantly agrees and shakes his hand to bid him farewell. He points toward the exit, telling her she can leave through the back door since the shop is not officially open yet. Une laughs off the awkward encounter and nervously announces that she will take her leave. As she opens the back door to exit, she freezes in shock upon catching a sudden glimpse of someone engaged in a back workout nearby. She gasps in sudden panic as a creaking noise echoes nearby, realizing someone is right outside. A heavy thud rattles the frame as a hand presses firmly against the surface to hold it shut. She struggles with the lock, growing frustrated as the door refuses to budge no matter how much it clanks. The girl slams her fist against the door in confusion, unable to comprehend why her exit remains stubbornly stuck. Frustration quickly turns to genuine concern as she wonders if the entire locking mechanism has completely broken. A voice grunts softly from the other side, wondering aloud if someone is standing right outside the door. Une's eye widens in sudden realization as she recognizes the familiar voice through the gap. She peers through the crack in disbelief, and calls out Mia's name, startling the blonde girl who presses her hands flat against the door frame. Mia peeks back through the narrow space with a heavily flushed face, silently worrying to our boy Daeho that they are in major trouble. The bright summer sky stretches over the city buildings on a warm afternoon. Mia turns red with a heavy blush and stammers, wondering why Une is standing right on the other side. Une freezes in her jacket as a sharp thud shakes the doorframe, leaving her startled by the sudden noise. Sweat trickles down Mia's flushed face as she struggles with the heavy gym session with Daeho, desperately telling her mother to wait outside for just a moment. Peering through the narrow crack, Une asks Mia what she is doing and why she is keeping the door held shut. Une raises her fist and demands to know what is happening, desperately pleading to be let out. Extremely exhausted, Mia lies through the gap, claiming she has an emergency stomachache to cover for her gym workout with our boy Daeho. Panicking on the other side, Une worries for her daughter and wonders what she should do next. Une turns her head toward the back hallway, searching around for a nearby restroom. A heavy padlock hangs tightly on the toilet door, completely blocking the entrance. Une clasps her hands together anxiously, offering to help her daughter if she just opens the door. Mia shouts back in a total panic, desperately telling her mother to wait outside for just a minute. Une gasps in confusion as her daughter refuses to let her inside. Determined to assist, Une bangs her fist against the back door and demands Mia open up so she can help. Light spills through the narrow gap as the heavy door creaks softly open. Mia huffs and pants with a flushed face, weakly calling out to her mother. Une rushes forward in total concern, asking her daughter if she is all right and what happened. Mia softly reassures her mother that she is fine. Mia looks down awkwardly and mentions she finished her business, prompting Une to ask how she ended up in this alleyway. Blushing deeply, Mia explains that she needed to find a restroom on her way back to the beach and stepped into the alley. Une sighs in sympathy for her daughter and asks if she handled her emergency right here in the alley, which Mia quickly confirms. Mia pulls at her mother's arm, nervously insisting they head back right away. Mia turns the tables on Une, questioning what her mother was doing inside that building in the first place. Une mumbles nervously, making up an excuse about searching for them in the heat, while Mia questions her strange explanation. Mia asks if she went inside just to cool off, pressing her flustered mother about what was actually in there. Une brushes off the situation and urges her daughter to get moving, since Unnim is waiting for them all alone. Our boy Daeho gasps in surprise, asking if Unnim is sitting by herself. Une turns to Daeho with a bewildered look, wondering where he has been this whole time. Mia quickly steps in to cover for him, explaining that he stood guard as a lookout while she took care of her business in the alley. Une asks why they took so long, prompting Mia to mention how she ran into Juri on her way to the store. Une ponders why Juri rarely stops by their house anymore, guessing that she simply grew up and moved on. The pedestrian traffic light glows bright red above the crosswalk. The trio waits silently at the street corner as onlookers stare in total amazement. Our boy Daeho peeks over at Mia with a deeply flushed face, letting out a soft sigh as he glances toward her. Daeho notes to himself in frustration that Mia never even cleaned herself up after their wholesome PT session. Realization strikes him as he contemplates what is still left inside her jacket. Mia looks away nervously while Daeho considers how she is still carrying his special elixir bottle. Daeho presses his flushed cheeks with both hands, his heart thumping wildly as he urges himself to inspect her treasury. A hand reaches out and firmly grabs hold of the planets, squeezing tightly. Daeho closes his eyes in sudden confusion, pausing as he tries to make sense of the strange feeling. Our boy Daeho gasps in utter shock as he locks eyes with Une, while she turns toward him with a deeply flushed, bewildered expression. The pedestrian traffic signal suddenly turns bright green. Unnim points out that the light changed, prompting the group to get moving across the street. Mia glances over her shoulder and urges them to hurry across the crosswalk. Une rushes ahead across the crosswalk while our boy Daeho supports Mia from behind as they keep pace. Soft ocean waves swoop across the clear blue horizon under a bright summer sky. Mia lets out a relieved breath as they finally make it back to the beach. Breathing heavily, Mia complains about how much trouble they went through just to grab something from the store. Mia calls out to Unnim on the beach blanket, announcing their return and apologizing for keeping her waiting so long. Tears well up in Unnim's eyes as she turns back and softly calls Mia's name. Unnim sniffles and admits she worried everyone had abandoned her, while Mia lets out a sheepish giggle and apologizes. Sweat trickles down our boy Daeho's flushed face as he stammers out an apology to Une, claiming he made a mistake. Une glances down in total confusion, wondering what he is referring to. Daeho wriggles his hands nervously over his waist and stammers that he only meant to keep the thought in his head. Une offers a gentle smile and reassures him that everything is fine and he does not need to worry. She motions for Daeho to hurry along, reminding him that Unnim is waiting for them on the beach. A beach ball sails high through the air against the bright blue sky. Unnim gasps in surprise as she reaches out to bump the ball back over, Mia leaps into the air with an intense shout and spikes the ball downward with full power. A nearby boy relaxes with his iced drink and notes to himself how incredibly good Mia is at sports. Our boy Daeho groans in pain as the spiked ball slams directly into his face. Mia turns around in shock as the impact lands on Daeho. Concern fills Mia's voice as she checks if Daeho is okay after taking the hit. Our boy Daeho rubs his red cheek with a silly grin and insists that it does not hurt one bit. Daeho jokes that his head might actually be made of iron, leaving Mia completely speechless. Une touches her cheek with a light blush, telling them to enjoy themselves while she heads off to change. Mia questions if Une is seriously leaving already and insists they are about to head back into the water. Une shakes her head and chuckles that she is completely exhausted and promises to return as soon as she changes. Une ties her hair back up and lets out a weary sigh. She thinks to herself how tough it is to keep up with the younger ones at her age. Une gasps as our boy Daeho suddenly approaches her, asking what he wants. Daeho asks her to step over with him for just a moment, leaving Une surprised and asking what is wrong. Une asks Daeho what is concerning him as he leads her away. A gentle breeze swooshes past the rocky cliffs along the beach under the bright sky. Une looks down in slight embarrassment while Mia, Unim, and our boy Daeho walk alongside her in the warm afternoon sun. Mia stretches her arms overhead with a satisfied sigh, reflecting on how exhausting yet enjoyable their day turned out to be. Une glances over at Mia with a subtle blush, asking her daughter if she really plans on heading all the way back home dressed like that. Mia smiles playfully as she keeps her arms raised, reassuring her mother that taking a single bus ride directly to their doorstep makes it no problem at all. Une insists that wearing a jacket out in public still feels inappropriate, but Mia quickly fires back, reminding her mother that she was just walking down the street in a swimsuit herself. Mia slips a light shirt over her jacket and mutters that the whole situation feels completely ridiculous. The yellow bus pulls up with a loud engine roar as our boy Daeho, Une, Unim, and Mia wait by the bus stop. Mia steps onto the bus first, flashing a cheerful grin over her shoulder as she tells everyone to head home. Une rests her face in her hand with a flustered sigh, quietly wondering who Mia takes after to act so boldly, completely sure it is not from her. The yellow bus accelerates down the open road, carrying the group away as they make their journey back. Inside the moving bus, Unim, Une, our boy Daeho, and Mia sit side by side along the back bench while Daeho subtly reaches over to rest his hand on Une's thigh. Mia lets out a tired sigh, mentioning she played a bit too hard and decides to catch a quick nap during the ride. Daeho chuckles softly as he promises to wake Mia up when they arrive, earning a warm comment about how cute he is. Mia smiles happily as she rests her head against Daeho, giggling as she playfully promises to buy him something nice. The yellow bus continues its steady drive along the tree-lined highway as the group makes their way home. Unim leans against Une as both women drift off to sleep on the bus ride home. Our boy Daeho notes to himself how exhausted they must be to fall asleep so quickly. Daeho checks his phone with a disappointed sigh, feeling completely wide awake and bored while everyone slumps over in sleep. Mia lets out a soft murmur and shifts in her seat, leaning heavily against Daeho's side. Daeho gulps nervously as sweat trickles down his flushed face, rendered completely motionless by Mia's presence. Mia sleeps soundly against Daeho, her head resting heavily on his shoulder. Our boy Daeho hovers his hand nervously, panicking over what to do in such a tense position. Gobong looms directly over him with an unreadable expression, calling out Daeho's name. Daeho jumps in total shock as Gobong catches him off guard while Mia remains fast asleep. Gobong demands to know what on earth Daeho is doing. Sweat drips down our boy Daeho's flushed face as he freezes in complete shock, wonderingly internally why Gobong is even there. Gobong looms overhead with a stern glare, directly asking Daeho where he has been this whole time. Sweat trickles down our boy Daeho's flushed face as he laughs nervously, meekly confessing that he went to the beach. Gobong pauses in total disbelief right in the middle of the bus aisle, echoing the word beach in complete shock. Gobong suddenly breaks into a wide, cheerful smile, gushing over how cool that trip sounds. Yuhi gasps in surprise right behind Gobong, her face turning flustered as she processes the news about their trip to the beach. Our boy Daeho flushes brightly as he recognizes Yuhi, quickly explaining that he went with his family. Yuhi sighs softly with a flustered blush, wistfully noting how fun that must have been and wishing she could have gone too. Mia stirs groggily from her sleep, hearing the background chatter and wondering internally what is going on. Yuhi's eyes widen in complete shock as her gaze locks onto someone sitting nearby. Yuhi offers a flustered greeting, bowing slightly as she politely addresses Miss Miacha. Mia stammers in shock with a heavily flushed face as she addresses Miss Miacha. Une turns around with a soft smile and asks Gobong when he managed to get on the bus. Gobong rubs the back of his head with a blushing grin, sheepishly offering a polite greeting to Mrs. Cha. Une smiles warmly and notes how long it has been since Gobong visited her house, inviting him to come over soon so she can cook him a delicious meal. Mia leans back casually and reminds Go Bong that she promised to teach him how to drink when he turned 20, teasing him for never showing up. Go Bong laughs enthusiastically, happily agreeing to drop by her place next time. Mia smirks playful, inviting Go Bong and Daeho over to her room for drinks. Nim sits up groggily, asking Daeho if those are his friends. Our boy Daeho turns to Nim and introduces his friend, Go Bong Han. Go Bong greets Nim warmly, mentioning how much he has heard about her from Daeho, leaving Nim pleasantly surprised. Go Bong laughs nervously as he notes that Nim lives in Taiwan and mentions how Daeho always bragged about her. Nim blushes deeply, flustered as she wonders what exactly Daeho said about her. Daeho cuts in, asking Go Bong what he is doing. The bus pulls up to the next stop, announcing that passengers are getting off. Hee and Go Bong wave cheerful goodbyes as they step off the bus, leaving Daeho behind with big smiles. Our boy Daeho sighs in frustration while struggling with a game on his phone, prompting Mia and Nim to watch as Mia demands he hand the device over. Mia smirks playfully and giggles at Daeho, calling him an idiot while effortlessly clearing the level for him. Mia and Nim get into a heated bicker right in the aisle, forcing Daeho to intervene and desperately plead with them to stop. Warm evening light washes over the quiet neighborhood house as dusk settles over the city. Hums a cheerful tune to herself in the kitchen while stirring a delicious meal boiling on the stove. Mia and Nim sleep soundly side by side on the bed, completely worn out from their long day at the beach. Our boy Daeho snores softly in his own room, curled up tightly around a pillow. Sua lies comfortably on her lounge chair, silently reading through her book. Night falls softly over the quiet house as darkness settles across the neighborhood. Mia wakes up in the middle of the night, feeling deeply parched. Mia makes her way into the dimly lit kitchen and grabs a glass of water from the dispenser. Our boy Daeho rubs his sleepy eyes in the kitchen while Mia notices him, asking if he also came down to get a drink. Our boy Daeho swallows hard, his face flushing bright red in the dim light. Mia turns back toward him with a soft look, holding her water bottle as she calls out Daeho's name. Cupping his cheek gently, Mia confesses that she wants to train back with him, though she worries it is not safe until Nim heads back home. Morning light breaks over the quiet neighborhood as birds chirp under the clear sky. Mia brushes her teeth in the bathroom, lost in thought with a soft blush lingering on her face. Our boy Daeho reaches out from behind in the bathroom, squeezing Mia tightly from behind. Birds chirp under a bright blue morning sky over the quiet neighborhood street. Nim flashes a bright smile as she grabs her bag at the door, announcing that she is heading out. Daeho, Mia, Une, and Sua gather around the entryway to bid Nim farewell, wishing her a safe trip and telling her to study hard. Nim peeks back nervously before leaning into Daeho, calling out his name in a low whisper. Nim offers a sly smile and asks Daeho to wait for her, promising that she will no longer be a minor the next time they meet. Nim turns around at the door and cheerfully waves goodbye, promising everyone that she will definitely return next year. Mia and our boy Daeho exchange knowing glances with sussy smirks, relieved that Nim has finally left. A cell phone buzzes loudly against the mattress as a hand reaches over to answer it. Une groggily wakes up to let Mia know that her phone is ringing, and Mia mumbles a sleepy response in return. Mia answers the call with a drowsy greeting, wondering if Ju-ri is on the other end. Mia presses the phone to her ear with a flustered look, softly confirming her identity to the caller. Ju-ri yells in utter disbelief through the speakerphone, demanding to know if Mia actually plans to visit her house today. Ju-ri ties her hair back in front of the mirror, agreeing that the weather today is perfect. Mia glances aside in a flush, stammering to Ju-ri that she is actually right in the middle of something. Ju-ri cuts her off aggressively, claiming she can already picture Mia doing nothing on her bed and warning her not to decline. Mia buries her face in the pillow while holding her phone, softly protesting that she was not refusing. Outside, under the evening sky, Ju-ri offers a polite greeting over the phone to Mrs. Cha. Une pauses while cleaning the living room, warmly welcoming Ju-ri and asking how she has been holding up. Ju-ri steps inside with a bright smile, answering that she is doing great and complimenting Une on how gorgeous she still looks. Une blushes deeply at the sweet compliment, giggling that Ju-ri is flattering her far too much. Mia steps into the hallway to greet Ju-ri, while Une continues sweeping nearby. Ju-ri giggles excitedly as she holds up a shopping bag, eager to show off what she brought over. Mia crosses her arms and tells Ju-ri that she already has beer at home, leaving Ju-ri surprised as she admits she had no idea. Our boy Daeho steps down the stairs with a cheerful grin and offers a friendly greeting to Ju-ri, catching her completely off guard. Ju-ri remains quiet as a subtle smile spreads across her flushed face. Night falls over the apartment building as excited chatter echoes from inside the window. Ju-ri blushes with excitement, eagerly asking if Daeho is going to join them for a drink tonight while Mia chuckles nearby. Mia slings a friendly arm around our boy Daeho, laughingly declaring that he is finally going to have his very first beer today. Our boy Dae-ho glances at his phone and asks if he should invite Go-bong along too, reminding Mia that she promised to teach Go-bong how to drink as well. Mia pauses in hesitation at the mention of Go-bong, softly admitting that she did make that promise to him before. Ju-ri leans in with a curious look, asking who Go-bong is, while Mia explains that he is Dae-ho's friend. Ju-ri immediately approves of the idea, telling everyone to call him over because the more people they have, the merrier it will be. Mia agrees to let him call Go-bong, while our boy Dae-ho readily nods along, eager to make the call. Une pops in with a bright smile, asking everyone if they are up for dinner, which leaves Mia utterly bewildered by her mother's sudden offer. Mia dismisses the idea, explaining that they are just going to drink and asking her mother to bring them some snacks instead, leaving Une completely flustered. Une sighs in disappointment, softly questioning if that is really the proper way for Mia to speak to her mother. Une continues sweeping the floor with a subtle flush, inwardly complaining that Mia has no idea her back is hurting. Su-ah looks over with a calm, neutral expression, predicting to herself that things are going to get quite noisy today. Mia confirms her plans with complete confidence, declaring that she intends to drink straight through the entire night. Mia laughs dismissively, telling Su-ah to just wear headphones whenever she writes or watches movies to block out the noise. Su-ah states coldly that she plans to observe stars through her new telescope anyway, making Mia piteously huff in reaction. Ju-ri tries greeting Su-ah cheerfully, but Su-ah simply brushes past her and asks who she is, prompting Mia to tease her for trying to act cool. Ju-ri sighs as Su-ah walks away, wondering to herself if Su-ah simply failed to recognize who she was. Ju-ri clicks her tongue softly, recalling how Su-ah used to be such a cute little girl when she was smaller. Mia ushers everyone inside, playfully telling Ju-ri to leave the icy princess alone so they can get back to their drinks. Mia issues a bold warning, claiming that once anyone enters her room, nobody leaves on their own 2 feet. Night settles over the quiet street as traffic signs gleam under the dark sky outside the house. Laughter echoes from inside while Su-ah crouches alone on the balcony, attempting to set up her telescope in silence. Su-ah sighs in frustration while reading through the instruction manual, muttering to herself how overly complicated the setup process is. A fist bangs loudly against the front door as someone calls out repeatedly, desperately asking to be let inside. Su-ah turns around in confusion as loud banging sounds echo from the front gate. The heavy metal gate clanks open into the dimly lit courtyard. Go-bong rubs the back of his head with a flush and greets Su-ah with a wide, goofy grin. Su-ah stares back at him with an unimpressed expression, coldly asking who he is supposed to be. Go-bong laughs sheepishly and introduces himself as Go-bong, addressing Su-ah with an awkward grin. Su-ah tilts her head in total confusion, wondering aloud what on earth a Go-bong even is. Go-bong laughs awkwardly while rubbing his neck, insisting that Go-bong is actually his real name. Cans of beer and bottles of soju line the table as loud, cheerful laughter fills the room. Ju-ri giggles with a heavy blush, teasingly asking if Go-bong is truly his actual name. Go-bong beams with pride as he explains that his grandfather gave him the name hoping he would go achieve his dreams. Mia takes a sip from her can and sighs thoughtful about how fast time flies, marveling that the day has finally come for her to drink alongside Go-bong. Our boy Dae-ho takes a tiny sip from his beer can, grimacing slightly as he complains to Mia that it tastes pretty bitter. Ju-ri leans over with a mischievous grin, chiding Dae-ho for taking small sips and telling him a real man needs to finish his drink with a giant gulp. Mia raises her beer high in the air and enthusiastically calls for everyone to get ready to chug, while Ju-ri cheers happily beside her. Everyone clinks their beer cans together with an energetic shout to kick off their drinking game. Confusion fills the room as someone wonders what that means and demands to know who said it. Ju-ri leans down and asks Mia what happened, but Mia admits she has no idea as everyone giggles and enjoys the fun atmosphere inside. Chants echo outside as the group cheers each other on to chug their beers, warning that the last person to finish will face a penalty. Empty soju bottles lay scattered across the floor as the drinking session stretches late into the night. Our boy Dae-ho slowly opens his eyes with a groggy sigh, wondering to himself what on earth happened. Our boy Dae-ho sits up in bed holding his throbbing head, wondering with a heavy sigh if he ended up falling asleep. Dae-ho gasps softly as he looks over to find Go-bong and Ju-ri completely passed out together on the floor. Ju-ri slumps soundly on the rug with a flushed face while Dae-ho notes to himself that everyone is fast asleep. Ju-ri slumps soundly on the rug with a flushed face while Dae-ho notes to himself that everyone is fast asleep. Dae-ho sighs internally, realizing Ju-ri is definitely not a heavy drinker despite how much alcohol she downed. Our boy Dae-ho blushes deeply, flustered by how Ju-ri leans into his face. Dae-ho notices the sweet scent of alcohol on Ju-ri's warm breath as she breathes softly right next to him. Ju-ri leans back with an intense gaze, asking if Dae-ho was training back while watching her, leaving him completely flustered and struggling to form a proper answer. Juri directly asks if he has ever had a PT session yet, making Daeho hesitate nervously as he stammers out her name. Juri decides she cannot just ignore him, telling Daeho to follow her as he looks up in total shock with a bright red face. Juri huffs softly with a heavy blush and an intense look in her eyes, promising that she will teach him personally. Mia flinches face down on the bed as her shirt hitches up her back. Mia slowly opens her eyes with a heavy blush, groaningly muttering that she wants a drink of water. Mia gasps in total shock, instinctively pulling her shirt down and clutching her chest in panic. Mia recoils in sudden disbelief, frantically questioning to herself why she is completely exposed. Mia suddenly remembers what happened, recalling that our boy Daeho was right beside her while she was asleep. Mia sweats nervously as the shocking realization hits her that they actually trained chest right next to everyone else. Gobong and our boy Daeho sleep soundly in each other's arms, snoring softly away on the floor. Mia glances around the dimly lit room in confusion, wondering to herself where Juri has gone. Water splashes continuously in the bathroom as Juri gasps with her mouth wide open under the steamy spray. Knocks echo against the bathroom door as Mia calls out to ask if Juri is inside. A hand reaches up to unlock the door with a quick click. Juri stands under the running water with a flushed face, answering back that she is taking a shower. Mia pauses in the hallway with a suspicious look, muttering to herself that she wants to use the bath right now. Confusion fills Mia's mind as she wonders why Juri would take a shower at such an odd hour. Morning light breaks over the peaceful neighborhood street as birds chirp under the clear sky. Gobong carefully presses a stick of RAM into place until a firm click echoes from the motherboard. Gobong grins triumphantly as he asks our boy Daeho if he heard the snap, reminding him to push until it clicks properly. Bright light flashes across the monitor screen, catching both boys completely off guard. Gobong and Daeho cheer with excitement and raise their arms in celebration, right as Juri approaches the doorway behind them. Juri leans against the doorframe with a flushed face and announces softly that she is heading home. Our boy Daeho turns with a flustered blush, asking Juri if she is really leaving already. Juri leans into Daeho's ear, softly whispering for him not to forget their plan to meet tomorrow, and telling him to make sure he shows up. Daeho chuckles sheepishly with a heavy flush, softly agreeing to see Juri tomorrow. Juri turns around with a cheeky smirk, giving a final playful wave as she bids him farewell. Mia eyes Juri judgmentally near the entryway, teasingly claiming her hips look larger and asking if she stopped working out, while Juri ties her hair up and tells her to shut up. Gobong peeks out with a soft blush and marvels at how pretty Juri is. Gobong leans over to ask our boy Daeho if he thinks his sister is even prettier. Daeho smiles sheepishly with flushed cheeks, agreeing that Yuhi is truly gorgeous. Gobong gleefully boasts that his sister is the prettiest, while Daeho quietly notes to himself that he hasn't seen her in quite a while. Sunlight bathes the bustling city street as commercial buildings tower under a bright sky. Our boy Daeho checks his phone with a subtle flush, wondering what time it is. Juri waves her hand high in the air with a bright, cheerful smile, calling out Daeho's name. Daeho turns around with a light blush and offers a friendly greeting back to Juri. Juri playfully notes that Daeho arrived early, while Daeho chuckles sheepishly and admits he just got there himself. Juri gently taps Daeho on the nose with a sweet smile, praising him for always being so punctual. Our boy Daeho taps away on his phone, suggesting they grab a delicious meal together and head somewhere nice. Juri smiles softly while typing on her phone, eagerly agreeing that his idea sounds wonderful. Juri looks at a gym booking page on her phone while Daeho stands flustered in the background, teasingly promising that today's PT lesson will be so much fun and educational. Juri lets out a soft sigh as she strolls outside, holding her cold drink while pedestrians pass by in the background. Sweat drops bead along her neck while she mutters to herself about how brutally hot it is again today. Juri walks ahead down the path, inwardly longing to escape the heat and read books inside an air-conditioned room. Hands slice through a plate of pork cutlet with a knife and fork, humming thoughtfully over the meal. Juri rests her flushed cheek on her hand across the table, teasingly offering to treat Daeho to a much better dish. Our boy Daeho chuckles quietly to himself, happily insisting that he really wants this pork cutlet. Daeho smiles cheerfully with a flush on his face, holding his cutlery high as he tells Juri that he is completely fine with his choice. Juri slurps up a bite with a soft smirk, playful teasing that pork cutlet is probably the only dish young boys ever order. Both of them stroll down the street together after their meal, holding cold iced drinks while enjoying the warm afternoon air. Our boy Daeho places a hand on Juri's back to guide her safely past a parked car, thanking her for the food before asking where they are heading next. Juri turns toward him with a thoughtful expression, reminding him that she promised to take him somewhere really good today. Juri nearly chokes on her coffee with a sudden spurt, catching Daeho off guard as he innocently asks if they are going to the game arcade. Juri pauses with her straw still in her mouth, utterly baffled that he actually thought of a game arcade. Our boy Daeho eagerly grabs Juri by the wrist, urging her to hurry up because he cannot wait to get moving. Juri gets pulled along with a startled blush, anxiously telling Daeho to hold on a second as he leads the way. Juri steps inside a quiet secondhand bookstore, browsing through the tall glass doors lined with rows of packed bookshelves. Juri flips through the pages of a thick book inside the dimly lit store, humming thoughtfully as she scans the text. A subtle smile spreads across her flushed face as she remarks to herself that she finally found an interesting read. A basketball arc high over the rim of an arcade hoops machine, accompanied by a sudden excited cry. Our boy Daeho laughs praise as Juri stretches her arms following her shot, letting out a soft grunt in response. Both of them double over with laughter in front of the arcade machines, while Daeho playfully asks why she threw the ball way up high again. A monstrous enemy takes a direct hit on screen while loud gunshots ring out, leaving the player with an urgent prompt to reload. Juri gasps in surprise while our boy Daeho laughs wildly, both aiming their light guns forward to blast away all the targets on screen. Soo-ah strolls down the quiet street carrying her fresh pile of books, adjusting her short hair while complaining to herself about the intense heat. Soo-ah pauses in her tracks with a wide-eyed gasp as something unexpected catches her attention nearby. Soo-ah turns toward the park gazebos and watches in utter shock as Daeho and Juri stand close together, laughing with heavily flushed faces. Soo-ah gasps softly with a flustered look on her face as she recognizes Daeho standing nearby. Juri reaches over and playfully grabs Daeho's hand. Soo-ah watches in stunned silence as the two walk away laughing together down the park path. Sunlight shines over the city street where a modern hotel building stands under a bright blue sky. Juri leans in to whisper in Daeho's ear, asking if he has ever been to a place like this before and suggesting they head somewhere good. Daeho turns bright red and fidgets nervously in front of the tall apartment buildings, stammering that this place seems like it is strictly for gym nerds. Juri smirks with a heavy flush on her face, reassuring him that he is a nerd now and promising that this will be his very first gym experience. Her high heels clack loudly against the pavement as she strides toward the entrance, past a blue sedan parked nearby. Soo-ah peeks around the corner of a tiled wall, gasping in complete shock at what she sees. Soo-ah crouches low in the shadows, frantically questioning what on earth is going on and why Daeho is together with Juri. Soo-ah narrows her eyes with a worried blush, wondering to herself if the two are really doing what she thinks. Juri leans back comfortably inside the room, casually noting how clean it is inside. Daeho marvels at the spacious setup, wide-eyed as he realizes this is an actual gym room. Juri stretches out on the bed and looks up at Daeho, softly pointing out that it is just the two of them alone in the room. Juri shifts into position on the mattress while Daeho stands flustered nearby, teasingly reminding him that they can finally start their educational PT lesson. Juri rests on the pillows with a heavily flushed face and an intense gaze, boldly declaring that they can do whatever they want in this room. A loud voice echoes across the neighborhood announcing that dinner is ready. Mia approaches Soo-ah asking to borrow her laptop, but Soo-ah instantly shuts her down with a flat refusal. Un-ae turns around in the kitchen, suddenly realizing someone is missing and wondering where the kid went. Un-ae casually mentions that our boy Daeho has not returned home yet. While Soo-ah stands nearby looking deeply unsettled, Soo-ah falls completely silent, her mind racing as she remembers exactly who Daeho was with earlier. Our boy Daeho bursts through the front door, startling Soo-ah and Un-ae as he shouts that he has finally returned home. Soo-ah greets Daeho as he scratches the back of his head with a sheepish chuckle, while Un-ae warmly lets him know dinner is ready. Mia peers over at Daeho with an annoyed glare, demanding to know where he was wandering around without even giving her a call, leaving him stammering that he was just out meeting some friends. Mia scoffs playfully at his answer, teasingly pointing out that Gobang is pretty much his only actual friend while Daeho giggles nervously. Daeho eagerly digs into the spread on the table, loudly thanking Un-ae for the delicious meal while Soo-ah watches him in tense silence. Everyone gathers around the dining table to eat quietly as a family. Yoongu leans in with a smile, asking Soo-ah if she likes the telescope he bought for her. Soo-ah takes a sip of soup before replying that she tested out its functions and found it really good. Yoongu asks Soo-ah when she plans to watch the upcoming summer meteor shower, pointing out how much money he spent on that gift just for the event. Soo-ah mentions that the meteor shower takes place in 2 days, but admits she worries because the heavy telescope is difficult to carry around. Un-ae asks if the telescope is supposed to be set up on top of the mountain, wondering why it cannot just be used from the yard instead. Soo-ah explains that the comet only comes close to Earth once every few decades, insisting that heading up the mountain is the only way to get a clear view. Un-ae worries about how heavy the gear is, pointing out that Yoongu has to work and will not be around to lend a hand. Our boy Daeho turns towards Soo-ah across the dining table and calls out her name. Daeho glances down at his food with a timid flush, softly offering to come along and help her carry the heavy equipment. Soo-ah turns back toward her plate, admitting that she really wants to see the dazzling meteor shower regardless. Un-ae questions if Soo-ah can actually handle carrying the equipment up the mountain, while our boy Daeho chimed in with a nervous laugh to boast about his own strength. Daeho turns red with hesitation, gently offering to assist her on the hike if she is comfortable with it. Suah stares back in total silence, causing Daeho to laugh nervously and backtrack in case she prefers to decline. Suah pauses briefly before opening her mouth to quietly accept his offer. Suah rubs a strand of her hair with a soft blush, directly asking if our boy Daeho would help her out. Night falls softly over the quiet residential street while someone inside the house seeks confirmation from Suah. Our boy Daeho holds his phone with flushed cheeks, timidly asking if he can really tag along with her. Chopsticks reach down to pick up a small sausage from the dish as Suah inwardly admits she has no other choice. Suah quietly chews her food, noting to herself that the telescope is simply too heavy for her to carry alone. Mia watches from the foreground and playfully chuckles, pointing out that Daeho actually comes in handy once in a while. Our boy Daeho smiles with a bright blush, softly confessing how happy he feels since he has been eagerly waiting for this event too. Later that evening, someone sits back in a gaming chair and rapidly taps away on a computer keyboard in a dimly lit room. Suah slumps backward in her chair with a heavy sigh, frustratedly realizing that her mind remains completely blank. She shifts uncomfortably in her seat, inwardly lamenting that creative inspiration never strikes whenever she works on this particular subject. Suah knows she cannot simply skip this crucial part or patch it up with poor work, as doing so would ruin the entire story. Suah walks away from her desk, reasoning to herself that great writers like Kundera and Haruki were never afraid to tackle this topic. She flops face down onto her mattress with a tired sigh, wondering if it is even possible to write about something she has never actually experienced herself. Suah rests on her side in the dim room, her mind racing as she stares silently into space. An unsettling thought suddenly crosses her mind as she wonders if our boy Daeho had a private gym sesh with Ju-ri. Suah chastises herself for being insane, questioning what on earth she is even thinking right now. Suah lets out a heavy breath, sternly telling herself to stop overthinking silly things. She spreads her arms across the mattress and decides it is finally time to get some sleep. Bright sunlight shines over the quiet neighborhood street as a brand new day begins. Someone calls out to their mother before leaving the house, letting her know they will eat dinner outside. Mia checks her phone with a light hum, playfully warning her friend never to hit on Taehyun because he is completely hers. Suah informs her mother that she is heading to the library for research and mentions that it will take some time, while asking if her mom is watching that silly show again. Birds chirp outside as Suah steps through the front door, silently noting how hot the weather is today. Our boy Daeho dashes down the staircase with a piece of toast held in his mouth, clutching a paper bag as he calls out for Mrs. Cha. Daeho turns around with flushed cheeks to explain that he is heading out to meet Gobong, leaving Une looking slightly surprised. Une hesitates with a subtle blush, softly pointing out that everyone else has already left the house. Une stretches her arms high above her head near the balcony, softly thinking to herself that it might finally be time. A sly smile spreads across her flushed face as she pumps her fist with newfound motivation, deciding to do some thorough spring cleaning. Under the bright blue sky near an overpass, Gobong reacts in total disbelief upon hearing about the upcoming space show. Gobong realizes that was why Suah was testing out the telescope earlier, while our boy Daeho confirms that Mr. Cha bought it for her during their trip to Seoul. Gobong eagerly asks if he can join them on that day, offering to help carry the heavy telescope up the path. Daeho winces in surprise as Gobong stands up, explaining that Suah explicitly agreed to just the two of them going and doubting that adding another person is possible. Gobong looks down with a disappointed expression, asking if there is really no chance at all, while Daeho sheepishly apologizes for having no say in her decision. Disappointment washes over Gobong's face as he processes the news in complete silence. Gobong softly accepts the answer, assuring Daeho that he understands the situation. Gobong rides away on his electric scooter with his bag strapped across his back, waving goodbye and telling Daeho to enjoy watching the show. Our boy Daeho hesitates with a slight blush as he turns back to speak. Une kneels on the floor with a rag in hand, wringing it out into a bucket. She wipes down the wooden surface, resolving to clean every single corner of Daeho's room while he is away. Une scrubs the floor thoroughly, assuming a teenage boy's room must be covered in dust. The door creaks open behind her as our boy Daeho unexpectedly steps back inside the room. Une gasps in shock as our boy Daeho stands near the doorway, catching her completely off guard on the floor. She looks up with flushed cheeks and calls out his name in utter surprise. Une quickly asks him when he returned home. Our boy Daeho stammers with a bright blush, softly replying to Mrs. Cha that he just walked in. Une continues wiping the floor with a nervous laugh, explaining that she needs a bit more time to finish cleaning and suggesting he head downstairs to watch television instead. Une glances back over her shoulder with flushed cheeks, softly reassuring him that she is almost finished with her work. Night settles over the quiet neighborhood under a dark teal sky. Une lies in bed with a blushed face, clutching her chest as her mind races. Une reflects on how long and eventful the day was because of what happened with Daeho, reasoning that he probably needed to let off some steam after holding back for so long. Yune stares ahead thoughtfully, reminding herself that she was the one who first guided him and feels responsible for staying by his side until he gets fully comfortable. Une ultimately resolves to treat our boy Daeho much better moving forward. She wants to make sure he never feels lonely again. Meanwhile, our boy Daeho sleeps peacefully in his room with his mouth wide open. Morning arrives with birds chirping under a bright blue sky. Someone remarks on how perfect the weather is today, excited that they will get a clear view of the sky with Suah. Daeho calls out to let mom know they are leaving, chuckling happily as Suah glances back and sternly warns Mia to stay out of her room. Une questions what Daeho packed in his massive backpack, pointing out how heavy it looks. Daeho smiles brightly with flushed cheeks, explaining that he brought a sleeping bag and bushcraft kit because mountains can be dangerous without a survival plan. Mia crouches down and teases him, asking who carries a sleeping bag in the middle of summer and scoffing that he must watch way too many remote camping videos. Suah tells Mia to just leave him alone, mentioning that she already warned him about the backpack being too heavy, but he refused to listen. Our boy Daeho chuckles confidently, boasting about his strength as he urges Suah to hit the road. Suah adjusts her short hair behind her ear and confirms they are heading out. She looks back calmly, telling the others she will see them tomorrow. Une calls out for Suah to help Daeho carry the heavy gear, while Mia playfully shouts after her not to beat him up along the way. Suah leads the climb through the dense forest, huffing softly as our boy Daeho follows closely behind her up the steep path. Suah stretches her arms back and catches her breath, admitting to herself how tough it is to hike up a mountain in the summer heat. Daeho wipes sweat from his forehead with a heavy huff, remarking that they are lucky it is a bit cloudy today or the hike would be even more exhausting. Suah continues forward along the rugged trail with a quiet sigh, admitting to herself that the climb is still exhausting. Daeho encourages Suah to hang in there since they will reach the top soon, but his foot suddenly slips on a loose rock. Our boy Daeho loses his balance with a flustered cry, wobbling under the weight of his heavy backpack as Suah turns around in surprise. Suah reaches out her hand to catch him, warning him to be careful. Suah cheers in excitement that they finally made it to the top, while Daeho gasps in disbelief. Suah confirms their arrival and calls out for him to come take a look. Daeho shields his eyes against the wind as he steps onto the open peak, gazing out at the breathtaking view alongside Suah. Suah brushes back her hair and admits she never expected the scenery to look so beautiful, leaving our boy Daeho completely awestruck beside her. Daeho collapses onto the grass with a heavy sigh, exhausted after carrying all the gear up the mountain. Suah turns toward Daeho, scolding him for bringing the sleeping bag and unnecessary gear when it only made things harder on himself. Our boy Daeho offers a sheepish grin, reassuring Suah that he will recover his energy as soon as he gets a little rest. A sudden gust of wind sweeps across the peak, causing Suah to tuck her hair behind her ear as she glances up at the changing sky. Thunder rumbles softly in the distance as Suah worries whether dark clouds will ruin their view of the stars, though Daeho reassures her that it is likely just passing shower clouds. He points out that the weather forecast explicitly promised sunny skies for the entire day. Suah gasps in shock as rain droplets begin to fall from the darkening sky. Heavy rain suddenly sweeps across the mountain ridge with a loud rush. Suah holds out her palm as raindrops patter against her skin, realizing with dread that a heavy downpour has officially started. Suah hangs her head in disappointment, lamenting that she had dreamed of this meteor shower for so long, while Daeho warns her that she is going to get soaked. Daeho watches in concern as the rain pours harder, soaking Suah's clothes within seconds. Suah wraps her arms around herself in the freezing rain with a flushed face, anxiously asking what they are supposed to do now. Our boy Daeho frowns under the steady downpour, worried that the rain will not stop anytime soon. Suah turns her head away with a flushed, damp face, quietly wondering what they should do next. Daeho points out that there is nowhere to hide on the peak and suggests they head back down the mountain. Suah glances back with an incredulous expression, firmly refusing the idea of giving up and heading back down. Daeho quickly clarifies his idea, explaining that he meant searching for a nearby spot where they can take shelter from the rain. Daeho reaches for Suah's hand with a flustered blush, offering gentle words of encouragement to help her hang in there through the downpour. Suah laments how hard it was to climb all the way up here, while Daeho worries that staying wet will make them both catch a cold. Suah lifts the hem of her soaked shirt to vent some heat, relieved that the dense tree canopy overhead acts like a temporary roof. Suah lets out a sudden sneeze as the rain continues to drench them, prompting Daeho to urge that they quickly find a proper place to take cover. Daeho gasps in surprise and calls out to Suah as he spots a dark opening ahead through the falling rain. Daeho beams with excitement as he announces that he found a spot that is just right for staying out of the rain. Suah shivers and mutters how cold it is, while Daeho chuckles and ushers her inside, praising himself for a job well done. A hand sets a glowing camping lantern down on the cave floor to light up the dark shelter. Suah clutches her arms with a sigh about the freezing air, prompting Daeho to warn her that staying in wet clothes might lead to hypothermia. Suah shivers with flushed cheeks, confused as to why it feels so much colder inside the cave. Daeho unrolls the sleeping bag inside the shelter, kindly offering it to Suah so she can warm up. Suah asks if the sleeping bag is soaked, but Daeho assures her that it stayed completely dry. Daeho pats the dry material, reminding her to wear her wet clothes before climbing inside. Suah gasps in total shock with a flushed face, bewildered by his sudden suggestion to wear her clothes. Daeho calmly explains that wet clothes would ruin the dry sleeping bag, advising her to go in a jacket to preserve her body heat. Suah yells in outrage, asking if Daeho has completely lost his mind. Daeho turns his back to her, reasoning that keeping wet clothes on ruins the effort, while promising to look away as she gets inside the sleeping bag. Suah shivers as she touches her soaked shirt, inwardly admitting how heavy it feels and how desperately she wants to get warm. Suah gasps anxiously as Daeho warns her about hypothermia, though our boy reassures her that he will never peak. Suah sighs with deeply flushed cheeks, completely overwhelmed by the embarrassing predicament she finds herself in. Daeho stares out at the heavy rain with concern, noting that it will get dark soon and showing no signs of stopping. Suah blushes in deep hesitation, wondering helplessly what she should do in this embarrassing situation. Daeho stays turned around toward the outside, suggesting they simply wait and hope the weather forecast turns out to be right after all. Suah huddles inside the sleeping bag, murmuring softly about how cold she still feels. Suah lets out a quiet sigh of relief, inwardly admitting to herself that it is surprisingly warm inside the sleeping bag. Suah realizes inwardly that Daeho's sleeping bag truly saved her from freezing. Suah reflects on the fact that Daeho got completely drenched in the rain as well. Daeho sneezes loudly into his hand, making Suah worry that he might end up catching a cold. Suah feels a sudden pang of guilt for hogging the cozy sleeping bag all to herself. Suah stares thoughtfully into space, fondly recalling memories from back when Daeho first moved into her house. A younger Daeho crouches beside a cardboard box with a joyful grin, admiring the chirping chicks he brought home. Suah looks down at him in her school uniform, questioning why a kid like him would buy baby chicks in the first place. Daeho chuckles nervously with flushed cheeks, timidly offering that he simply found them too adorable to resist. Suah stares back in total silence, inwardly remembering how she scolded him for acting like a naive junior high student back then. Suah turns away with a quiet scoff, calling him a silly fool while warning him to take good care of those chicks before they die. Suah turns back with a cool expression, reminding him that chicks are just born frail. Suah continues reflecting on how young and naive Daeho seemed to her back then. Young Suah crouches beside the cardboard box to admire the tiny chicks, giggling softly as they peep. Suah smiles softly with flushed cheeks, inwardly admitting that they were quite cute and that she never actually hated him. Young Daeho bursts into tears under the rain, cradling a chick in his hands and crying out that they are all dead. Suah stares down silently in the rain, burdened by the heavy memory. Young Daeho stayed crouched on the ground all night under the pouring rain, refusing to leave the spot where he buried the chicks. Suah, holding an umbrella, checks on Daeho, telling him to come inside before he catches a cold. Suah loses her patience and shouts at him to get inside, finding his stubbornness frustratingly foolish. Daeho ended up sick in bed with a high fever, marking the moment Suah began keeping her distance from him. Suah inwardly calls him a complete moron as she taps her fingers against the glass table. Suah leans back against the bedroom door, reflecting on how frustrating it was that he bought those chicks in the first place. Suah calls out to Daeho from inside the shelter, warning him that staying out in the rain will make him catch a cold. Daeho turns around with a wet, flushed face, coughing softly while insisting that he is healthy and strong enough to handle it. Suah notices his trembling smile, realization striking her as she sees that his lips are turning blue from the cold.